When Melissa showed up as usual a little late, he didn't even look at her or say anything else, despite the fact that she was always late. The previous owner of this body had a terrible relationship with her father, and if you want to know more about her, get comfy, grab your popcorn, and get your ears ready. The heroine of the love affair, her beloved story begins with the fact that thanks to her abilities and magic, Just People on a Musher received universal recognition and was adopted by a baron. In the course of the play, she takes 4 handsome men into her harem, one of whom is a crown prince, a werewolf gunslinger, and a billionaire. Of course, they are all enchanted by the protagonist. Perhaps all the fact is that she is beautiful and kind, like an angel descended from heaven. But more importantly in this novel, there is an antagonist. She is the crown prince's fiancée, the older sister of the gunslinger, a werewolf hater, and the main troublemaker who puts a stick in the rich man's wheels. Melissa Podebrat. Melissa is a bitch who has a nasty attitude toward everyone, so now you can see why her family has such an atmosphere. At dinner, Melissa learned that the Duke's son had left, saying that there were people in danger that he had to protect. Melissa was outraged, because it seemed that the child did not even know that he had his own home, so she would like him not to return to chemistry. But the Duke couldn't do that because Jake and his only heirs, he couldn't do that. Even though he was the only one, he was always wandering around doing what he wanted, and Melissa didn't understand why he liked him so much. Could it be that he was the son of a woman? And if that was the case, then his favorite daughter would be happy to leave him, because she had come thinking that they were dying alone? But it seemed she was wrong. It's not fair to suffer the consequences of her terrible character and behavior in the past because she didn't do it all. That's what she thought at first. But after some thought, she realized that life was pretty good. After all, she used to work hard every day at college. Probably if it wasn't for that accident, she would have died of high blood pressure anyway. But when she woke up, she realized that she was in an affair and finally escaped from that hellish student life. Now she was the owner of a forehead without a single wrinkle and big golden-colored mustard cat eyes, an appearance she associated with the city dog. However, she could bear it because Melissa in the novel doesn't die, so her end isn't the worst, and she would just like to spend a happy, quiet life as the Duke's daughter. She didn't want to and wasn't going to play the villain anymore. However, that doesn't mean she would immediately repent and become a saint. Although the male protagonist, she certainly didn't plan to change everything drastically. As long as the girl does not start crossing others in life, as Melissa will be perfect. So she decided to write a letter to the Crown Prince of the Empire himself. First, she asked how the guy was doing and told him that in her garden birds were chirping and flowers had a joyful fragrance, and on this beautiful day she would like to inform him that she would like to annul their engagement. Melissa loved the Crown Prince with all her heart, so he occupied a huge place in her heart from which it is urgent to get rid of. As a reason, she explained that in the card with the bouquet, the guy wrote the name of another person, and she did not want to know this lady with whom her fiancé spent hot nights in the last days. After that, her maid came into her room, and Melissa asked her to deliver a letter to the imperial palace for the Crown Prince, even though it was the 100th time she had done it. Melissa was a little indignant because it seemed to her that the girl didn't consider her mistress. But in any case, now we were thinking about whether she should carefully choose the outfit for the meeting with Yuri. And now she was remembering everything that had happened recently. First of all, she was in the Crown Prince's living room where the Imperial Scion had brought this unknown lady. Secondly, right now this guy is doing this kind of thing right in front of her. And thirdly, Melissa went there on his orders because the guy said he wanted to show her something. Fourth, according to Melissa's recollection, it's not the first time he's done that. Summing up, the Crown Prince was a guy who didn't deserve her angelic attention. However, this time when the girl called out to him, he turned around, a guy who always ignored her. And of course, he would be your surprised because he was constantly showing off in his mistress's Melissa. And every time the girl was furious, she screamed and grabbed the girl's hair, but never said anything to the Crown Prince. Although all this time the real scoundrel was our beloved prince. Of all the men in the novel, the girl hated the prince, and considering his horrible behavior, she didn't understand how Melissa could fall in love with this creature. But now the guy completely denied not seeing his guilt, and was offended that the girl reacted in such a way, saying that she had a very bad character and her behavior was terrible. The girl didn't understand at all. Did he seriously think that he was being honorable by making out with other girls in front of her? because she had noticed that he was an excellent kisser and she wanted to help him demonstrate his skill on the parquet, because after all, it was the perfect partner for a man like him. However, immediately the expression of the prince changed. His face became shocked, and now it reminded her of a deer. Why the girl was surprised? Because this guy had the courage to have an affair on the side, but he trembled because of a couple of phrases. The prince had always watched Melissa's cruel behavior in silence because he had never had to be her victim himself, and he must have been dumbfounded that she had finally vented all her rage on him. But it's finally time for her to get what she deserves for once. Since she's been reborn in this case, his fiancé is no longer a douche. But in fact, they would not marry soon enough, because in the novel, the prince falls madly in love with Yuri and asks Melissa to part peacefully. But his plea comes as a great blow to the duke's unhappy daughter. The girl who loves with all her heart cannot accept the breakup. She cries and refuses to accept the prince's decision. However, later the prince leaves Melissa in public, trampling her reputation and ruining her life. But now she couldn't let it happen, and didn't understand what the police liked so much about him, since she's so come to think of letting him go, since Blood has no feelings for her, and is openly cheating, so there was no reason to engage. Obviously, he was always putting on a show like this to get her to be the first to talk about breaking off the engagement, since after all their engagement was just a political move, and yet he simply hated Melissa. No matter how many times he talked her out of it, she didn't even want to hear about it. So now she couldn't blame him, even though he wasn't trash. It didn't matter now, because in the near future she would meet Yuri, and since everything was going so well, she would give him that long-awaited breakup they both craved, and she hoped that nothing bad would happen if she did it sooner than in the novel. There will be no reason to get involved with Yuri, because she won't meet the bad they are with, especially she is the Duke's daughter. Her nothing can stop the annulment of her engagement to the prince won't interfere with up to 5 marriages in the future, and hoped that it won't hurt her family too much. This means that even if her fiancé accept the prince, then breaking them up helped and will not cause problems, and she finally told the guy what he longed to hear, but the guy refused, said they could not do it. At the same moment, he pushed away the girl sitting next to him, and Melissa didn't understand what was going on since he always acted like a gentleman. Was he really so in love with this girl? Because this reaction was a surprise to her. The prince did not understand why she so suddenly wanted to break off their engagement. But wasn't that what he so persistently achieved by his behavior? And she wondered why he showed her all those fascinating pornographic scenes with his mistresses. However, she was surprised, because judging by his look, it looked like a really sincere emotion. And if she misunderstood everything and the prince did not expect to break up, what prompted him to do this mayhem? Perhaps the plot has changed, and instead of Yuri, he fell in love with another girl. The girl, realizing that he didn't want to break off the engagement, assumed that he had a fetish for cheating, but when it turned out not to be the case, she decided that he was just messing with her, and she really got it right. He was just trying to drive Melissa around, and his actions and words had absolutely no hidden meaning. Melissa had absolutely no decent words to say, so she just kept silent, trying her best not to lose her temper, and the prince had nothing to say. The awkward silence was broken only by the rustling of clothes that the embarrassed mistress was successfully pulling on. After the conversation with the prince, Melissa's memories, before vague, gained color and clarity, judging by all the scandalous affairs of the prince with other women, were justified by excessive cruelty and the bride's shortness. Because of such a flattering characteristic given by the prince, Lady Melissa was constantly criticized by others. But in fact, all this she experienced very painfully. Even in Korea, everyone blamed the woman if her partner cheated on her, because naturally, a man will go to the side if the girl is not good enough. Now, the prince started blaming her for everything, saying that she was the first one to hit on him, constantly hung up on him, harassed him, and several times even came over uninvited. She had no idea how hard it was for him to bear it all. Melissa realized why he had been silent all this time, because now he was trying to make himself a victim, thinking that they were the same in front of her completely innocent face. The girl confirmed that maybe sometimes she really annoyed him, but she behaved that way only because she loved to drink tea together and sometimes cuddle, because she thought that it was absolutely normal for a couple in love. So now she apologized if she made him uncomfortable, but he just nodded like a complete idiot. She had never met someone as uncomfortable as this before, and her mind was already ringing. Every time Melissa received an invitation from the prince who called her to himself, she spent a whole day choosing an outfit, overwhelmed with happiness, did everything to look flawless, and every time after a long effort, the girl saw the same picture. But even so, the girl could not bring herself to ignore the prince's letter, because it would be proof that he thought of her at least for a moment, and a timid hope warmed her heart. She didn't understand how he was doing all these disgusting things until now she had refused their engagement. Did he really think she wouldn't want to break up after all she was in love with him? If she and the little bit of common sense that is left in her understand correctly, the crown prince, all this time cheating left and right, thinks it is absolutely normal to behave like this simply because she still loves him. However, the girl finally decided to end it all by saying that she didn't love him anymore, but the crown prince didn't believe her, thinking that she was just mad. The expression on the prince's face looked like someone had just told him that the earth was actually flat. It must be because throughout his life Melissa had been crazy about him, and the pup was still convinced of her unconditional love. But she didn't know how to explain to him that things were different now, because feelings were unpredictable and subject to change. She was referring to him and his lower body making love every night, so she assumed that the crown prince was an expert in such matters, but it seemed she was wrong. So she said that she wanted to finally break the engagement since they had no reason to continue their relationship, but really pissed Melissa off. She just wanted to get rid of her bride status besides the prince, and she wondered if this guy would ascend the throne, how quickly he would dub the empire. However, the prince still resisted breaking off the engagement to give the guy credit. His looks are quite attractive. But looking at him now, Melissa saw only a third-rate Cossack. In other words, any hint of understanding and sympathy in her soul was irretrievably gone. For all his brooding, there was a line he shouldn't have crossed, and because he wouldn't agree, her blood pressure was rising again. At the same time, the prince's mistress decided to leave quietly while she was not being noticed. However, at some point she could not keep her feet and stumbled, falling to the floor with a shriek. The guards rushed into the room. They assumed that Melissa was at it again because of the broken ashtray, her shrill screams, and the prince's girlfriend sitting on the floor crying. And also the emperor's offspring, tired of his bride's antics, considering how Melissa had behaved before. When they saw this picture, they thought she was to blame. However, even though Melissa tried to explain that she had done nothing, the prince and the girl displayed excellent acting and apparently just wanted to make her look like a villain since no one even wanted to listen to her. She knew that it was useless to try to break free because she would only hurt her neck and wrists. If you think about it, the prince had never apologized to her, and she swore to herself that he would pay her for all these antics. She tried to convince herself that it wasn't about an old grudge. I mean, yes, the groom had insulted her, and the guards had thrown her out of the palace, but the look on the footman's face seemed to say, did she get into trouble again? But Melissa was still in her right mind, and was just thinking about what would happen if a guy like him came to the throne. Obviously, the empire would turn into ruin. He would simply ruin every aspect of society and then condescend to mere mortals hoping for forgiveness and cause absolute chaos. Of course, she supposed that he might change after meeting Yuri, but she thought that it wouldn't work because now the prince had gone too far and lost the last chance to redeem himself, and even Yuri wouldn't accept him. On rare occasions, the prince treated Melissa in particular at events they had to attend together. His forced smiles only added fuel to the fire of misunderstanding between them, and that was how he assured the girl that he had feelings for her. So now Melissa couldn't let such a man get close to the beautiful angel Yuri. From this, it came out that killing was the only right option, and she didn't see any others and didn't want to look for them. In addition, she was a villain, so it should not be difficult for her, and she only had to find out where and how to hire someone. Since her target is the crown prince, it is necessary to be extremely careful. Thinking about all this, Melissa didn't even notice how the carriage stopped and the door opened. In front of the boy footman, there was a strange picture of a girl who was muttering about how it was better to kill someone, thinking out loud. He was very frightened and yet found the strength to tell her that she should not maim people so recklessly and was already worried about being fired. But Melissa realized that this boy was not the one who would suffer at her hand, so she smiled to calm him down. But she did not do it well, because the boy was even more frightened and fell to his knees begging for forgiveness and telling her that he had a wife and rabbit, whom he loved like his own children. Melissa realized that she needed the advice of an experienced man, and the only suitable candidate was Duke Patabrat, her father. Although she was quite tall, she always had to hold her head up high when talking in order to see her father and not feel like a dwarf. His stern and intimidating face looked exactly like Melissa's. But of all his qualities, the most striking was his authority. After they sat down to drink tea together, the Duke asked what she wanted to say because it had been almost 10 years since they had communicated with her in this way. The girl realized that the man did not even listen to her, but she just wanted to talk to him normally, so she decided to be honest with him and told him that she wanted to break off the engagement. But before she could say it, a guy burst into the room. The scantily clad guy who blatantly ignored her questions is Melissa's younger brother Jake. And a miracle has finally happened, and the prodigal son has deigned to return home, along with being one of Yuri's lovers and the heir to the Potterbraid estate. The boy is also a professional imperial mercenary. Thanks to him, all those who stood up against the ruling family died mysterious deaths. Also in the novel, he despises his sister, but in any case, this little boy has earned a great reputation. Despite his young age, he has the best results in the world and is good at sorcery, and usually Jake does not show up at public events. However, the reason for this is unknown. And when he does, he stands in a corner like an outcast hiding in a hood. This secretive boy who doesn't like to show his face in public is always wandering around and is never at home. Looking at his appearance, she realized how much attention he could attract, but he had to come home once in a while. How lucky he was with his genes, and plus he was much better looking than her. No one would think they were related. Melissa's always liked this hero from the shadows watching and secretly in love with Yuri. But the boy began to resent his father for hanging all those ribbons on the ceiling, because even a 5-year-old would cringe at the horror of it. And from the smell of the tea, he could tell it was the cheapest stuff he could buy. He asked his father not to lose his dignity. That was the reason he wasn't coming. And who knew Jake could spit out words at 10 words a second, a gunslinger, a magician, and a rapper. Just a dream man. He's tired of hearing his father hear every word he says, but never follow through with it, even though he told him once a long time ago that Melissa is a child. So if he doesn't decorate her room with girly things, she'll throw a tantrum. But that wasn't what he meant. Melissa was surprised to realize that the whole circus was her brother's fault, because apparently he was even worse than the Crown Prince, not realizing where the awesome Snow Queen from the novel was. She knew him to hate her sister and her own father. But this man was different. It really shocked Melissa. She felt like someone was hitting her over the head. Her favorite character wasn't so cocky either, because he was just listening to his son, sitting like a goody-goody and listening to the boy's sermons. But Melissa tried to think positively, because maybe Jake was a little chatty only in the family circle. She asked her brother what he was doing here, but he just ignored her. And she concluded that he had a nasty temper, because he couldn't even talk properly. She tried to subtly hint to him that she needed to talk to the Duke, but the guy suddenly, to her surprise, mentioned the prince's crown. And the girl was just out of her mind with anger and tried to remember, because it seems that the novel mentioned something like that. Jake and the Crown Prince were friends, a bond that helped her brother strengthen his relationship with the imperial family, so how they became enemies over Yuri was described in an incredibly dramatic way. But now her brother said that he knew she wanted to break off the engagement and asked her not to, which Melissa assumed that the prince was on his knees begging her brother to talk her out of it. But if her brother had come here at the prince's request, that would be the most plausible version, especially when you remember the look in his eyes that said exactly what she had forgotten. Jake was looking for his father to convey the prince's request, and the maid had told him where the Duke was. The father would listen to his son, and since Melissa could not disobey the will of the house, her plans to break off her engagement to the Crown Princess would be ruined. And now they were all here together, so the Duke would hear everything and know both versions of what was happening. The girl sat down and said that she knew that he did not like her, but she did not like him much. However, she felt sorry for him because they were of the same blood. But he hadn't even shown her the respect she deserved as a big sister, so now she didn't think of him as a brother either, especially when he'd stabbed her in the back like a pathetic coward. Jake probably knew it was mean to denounce her to her father, so she simply told him that she was breaking off the engagement and couldn't stand him any longer, and didn't ask for his help. So she asked him to keep his displeasure to himself and left, realizing that she had been a little more aggressive than she had planned, hoping that everything would go away. Going into her room, Melissa couldn't believe what she saw. hoping it was a nightmare. However, even after she hit herself, she felt the pain realizing it was happening in real life. She was furious because her cozy room had just turned into a hell. On the right wall, and on the left wall, even on the ceiling and on the floor, the damn crown prince. She realized that it was all done by her brother. I do not understand how he dared, and where he took all these posters of the prince in different poses. Is it from a personal collection, and whether it is legal to make so many portraits of members of the ruling family? Besides, they were all glued with magic and she couldn't get them off, so she had to leave or her mental health wouldn't stand it. As she was about to leave the room, she saw another portrait of him on the door, which she hadn't expected to see, and she seemed to fall out of reality for a while. It took her a long time to get out of there. She promised that her brother would kiss her fist, and then she went in search of him with burning eyes. But apparently, he is an imperial assassin for a reason, because she never found him. When she met a maid, she asked where her brother had gone, but she said that he had told her that he wasn't worth a thank you, and Melissa was furious. Her brother still thought that she was a fan of the prince, so he took her actions as an attempt to attract attention and thought that she would go crazy again at the sight of his image. The girl couldn't stand all this tension and started laughing hysterically, and the maid ran away in tears saying that she would call a doctor. Melissa knew that she looked quite strange in the eyes of the staff, but her head was occupied with the thought that she needed to talk to her younger brother. She realized that her fist was ready for a heart-to-heart talk, and Jake was going to be a meat chop today. She looked out the window and said that she had heard from the servants that there was a rat in the chimney, but who would have thought it was a white rat? She smiled wryly, for poor Jake had indeed hidden himself well, and in answer to his wondering how she had found the place, she said that for such a great sister it was easy. But really, it was written in the novel, for right now they are near the chimney on the roof of the house. The servants only come up here for general cleaning, and there's a flat plane to lean on, which is the perfect place for privacy. But there's one little drawback. If you fall, you'll be nothing but horns and legs. In the novel, Jake, who lives on the roof, often hid here from his hated relatives, even called his secret place, and once brought here Yuri on the worst date of her life. The guy asked her to leave, but all she wanted to ask was how dare he turn her nice room into such a hell. However, her brother was at a loss because he was sure that she liked the prince. However, the girl replied that she didn't like him anymore, and that's why she was going to break off the engagement. However, when she heard that Jake didn't believe it, she explained that her tastes were very specific. However, she realized a lot from watching him spend time with other ladies. And in response to her brother's laughter, she explained that her brother was worse than he was because he'd turned her bedroom into a country toilet, and she could have sworn she could smell it, which annoyed her. She ended it all by saying that without her permission, playing designer was a terrible mistake he should have thought a few times before raping her bedroom. Then, that it was trivial rules of etiquette and morality, and furthermore, if he behaved in such a way, she would get very angry. However, immediately they heard a very familiar voice asking what Melissa and Jake were doing in such a dangerous place. That familiar silhouette belonged to Martha. Martha had raised Melissa and Jake, and last year she had left as they had both grown up, the nanny often argued, but was the only one in the entire estate who loved the Duke's daughter. But what suddenly happened was that Martha had returned, and now she was shouting for them to get down from there as quickly as possible, for it could be dangerous to their lives. But the woman calmed down a little and apologized to them because she had just arrived and was already telling them off. But their young master and young mistress were still behaving like little children, especially the girl should have taken care of herself. So many years had already passed Mrs. Already a Bride, but it felt like yesterday, and the woman cried at how fast time flies and how happy she was for them. She did not remember what happened next because she lost consciousness because of the strong shock. Thus, Melissa lay unconscious for half a day, and she was very angry at the thought that the crown prince had beaten her. She just wanted to lie in that soft bed and not think about anything. If she could go back in time and grab her by the throat, she would tell him to stop begging for it. But because of her reckless behavior and Melissa's stubbornness in the past, they have what they have, and now she was to reap the terrible fruits of her labors. But what irritated her the most now was something else. For before the prince had simply brushed off the inquiries of his betrothed, but now he had changed. Now he wanted to announce the wedding at the reception because she wanted it and insists on not wanting marriage. But according to the plot of the novel, he would not even invite the bride to the ball. And now when Melissa asked him to break off the engagement, expecting that everything would be fine if she announced her no in front of all the nobility, but he did not inform her and easily wrote her off. She was sure the prince was planning to tell the duke about it and spread the rumors without her knowledge. So she must find him in order to solve everything and prevent it from continuing. The maid said that his lordship had left recently, saying that he had to settle matters in one province, and Melissa was furious that he had just run away from her. The maid had also heard something, though it was not important, but it was said that His Highness was buying up all the expensive outfits, jewelry salons, and he also said that his bride should be the most beautiful at the ball. Melissa didn't understand what was going on. Had he forgotten everything that had happened? However, it was not so simple because it should not be forgotten that she is the daughter of a duke, a noble lady who also has power, or he thinks that she cannot buy her own clothes and absolutely does not consider her opinion. She was so furious that she realized that one day she would kill him, but now she had no time to think about this abomination because she had to find a solution to the main problem. It's useless because probably the whole empire knows what's going on, and who would believe such a devil like her, who was dragging around the imperial scion for so many years? She had already considered the option of breaking off the engagement before the reception, but to annul an engagement between nobles requires the consent of both parties. And it was very difficult because she knew that the crown prince would not give in to her. So the only option she had was to kill him until he gave in, although she could just skip the ball. But that was the easiest way. After all, the idea of skipping the ball was a bad idea, but the catch was that it was organized by the ruling family. The Basilios Empire held 2 balls each year, one in the spring and one in the fall. Since it was a large-scale event, nobles and even some commoners could afford to purchase an invitation. It is not an event that she, the prince's fiancée and daughter of the duke, can easily miss, because thanks to the crown prince, everyone expects them to announce their wedding there. If she doesn't come, he will be publicly humiliated, and she was already anticipating his shame. Then she asked her maid to break her legs so that she couldn't dance, but she was refused. Her cynical maid always listens to her tirades, and each time she responded with frightening calmness, and now she wanted to swat the prince even more. But she had no other choice, and she wondered who in their right mind would take on the prince if she didn't start walking around like a madwoman with a flower in her hair, or beat the prince in front of everyone, then become a toy in his hands. Either way, she knew she couldn't miss the grade. She was just raging and angry, realizing that she was only 2 weeks away from her acceptance and didn't know what she could do either. She was already thinking about spreading dirty rumors about him among the guests. But first, since she had to go, she had to pick out a package, and she decided to wear the ugliest dress in the world, something that looked like trash. Because she was too busy thinking about destroying the prince, she completely forgot. And then the important event of the spring ball is shopping for a suitable outfit. Usually girls hire the best seamstresses or a month before the festivities buy ready-made dresses in salons and distinguishes this ball from others. Some even travel to faraway lands for unique styles and fabrics. Some wear family heirlooms passed down through inheritance, and there are even those who fight for such things as spring ball was a long-awaited event for many. And for Melissa, it's a great opportunity to finally get back at the prince, because if you think about it, the prince already dislikes her. So if she comes to the ball in a horrible way, he will be so annoyed that he will never mention their wedding again in his life. She didn't care that her own reputation would fall below the plinth, for she was already at the bottom and had nowhere else to fall, so she didn't care at all. Her brother joined them, however, and was surprised that there was no limit to how low a man could sink, for he had followed her all the way to the fashion house. Jack wondered if Melissa really thought he'd come all this way just because he wanted to. Obviously, the crown prince had told him to do something like that. Melissa shouted at him, "Watch your sister not to make a mess of things and call him just another doggy prince expecting to see someone new." Then they finally left the fashion houses. Melissa was angry because the weather was beautiful outside and she was stuck here picking out a stupid dress. But her maid asked her if she didn't realize that the ball was next week, and Melissa should have bought an outfit a long time ago. After all, they were on a time limit and suggested that she pick one. But Melissa knew that, but she didn't want to do it, because her sense of style was abysmal, and her social skills were even worse. She couldn't even hold a basic conversation, and telling someone like her to get ready for the ball was impossible, and she hadn't even figured out how to get rid of the prince's crowns at the ball yet. While they were walking down the street in one of the alleys, the girl saw a body lying there and decided to get closer to him, smelling the disgusting odor. His hair was in a terrible state and his body was terribly thin. She noticed that he was emaciated and even wanted to give him money. But immediately a brilliant idea appeared in her mind, as it was the easiest way to get rid of the prince, and she didn't realize how she hadn't thought of it before. She then gave him her hand, saying that she could help him. It was obvious from the guy that he was hungry and tired, and Melissa reached a new level by picking up a homeless man off the street. She realized that probably at the ball, many girls would give the prince signs of attention, and he would definitely seduce one of them, every one of them. But if compared to all these lovely women in the arms of the prince's crown, the man opposite him was not inferior to them in charm. In fact, he was even more beautiful than all of them. One of the advantages of her rebirth into Melissa's body was that there were more opportunities to see handsome men. The first was her stunning fiancé, Crown Prince, and then came her brother, also blessed by Apollo, and even the servants working in the skill is very attractive. Because of this, she developed the ability to recognize a diamond amongst the dirt. She realized this when she saw a homeless man lying on the ground. No matter how dirty he was, innate beauty could not be hidden. She needed a handsome partner only if she wanted to piss off the prince's crown, so she grabbed his hand and brought him home. Her maid was indignant because she didn't understand if she was in her right mind and how it happened that she had bought a homeless man instead of a dress. However, Melissa promised her a double bonus, and from that moment, Yona was fully supportive of her. Because how could she stop Melissa from helping a person in need, as she was a perfect example of a noble lady, and she was touched by her kindness. Melissa then realized that Yona was indeed the most calculating, greedy person she had ever met in her entire life. Luckily, the estate had been empty since the Duke had left on business, and he swore he hadn't run away because he was afraid of his daughter. He just needed to settle matters in one of the provinces far away. So they quickly sneaked in through the back door and started the plan. While Melissa waited for him, she decided to remember the scheme of things. She has to think about it. The prince used cheating to piss Melissa off, but she is not forbidden to socialize with others. Yes, cheating will make her a scum, but unlike the prince, she will not kiss someone she doesn't even like. She wanted to add just a little bit of surprise, a pinch of imagination, since she didn't care about the prince's sense of loss or jealousy. She just wanted everyone at the ball to be speechless at what was happening. No one could imagine that his fiancé, who was always running after him, would come to the ball with another godlike man who is not a relative and no one knows him. One could assume that he is her lover, or just a toy. Subsequent to various misconceptions and speculations, the prince will find himself in an unpleasant situation. After all, that's exactly what she needed. She didn't have to worry about gossip, and they could watch as much as they wanted, because she had a reputation in high society anyway. She wasn't going to have any kind of active social life or fight for power and influence. She just wanted to show that Melissa wasn't just another empty-headed prince's dog. She said that she would like him to come to the ball as her date. Of course, he could refuse, and she wouldn't force him because she wasn't helping him, because she expected something in return. But if he agreed, she would reward him generously, and he didn't even have to learn etiquette. It was enough just to stand next to her pretty face. Then the guy smiled embarrassedly and looked even cuter, and Melissa lost her temper for a second and laughed, realizing how incredible he was. Then she remembered that they hadn't introduced themselves to each other and asked who he was, what his name was, and where he came from. Because they were business partners now, so they should know at least that much about each other. But immediately she realized that she had made a mistake. Because how could she ask his name when he didn't even have a language and didn't know what to do? However, Yona had an idea when she gave him a piece of paper and a leaf from which they learned that the guy's name was Nain, and he was a worthless, unworthy beggar, and therefore very grateful to Melissa for the chance to start life with a clean slate. Melissa realized that using this innocent guy made her feel like a bad person, so they decided to eat first before continuing the conversation. The long-awaited X-Day had finally arrived, and even the Crown Prince had come to escort her, despite the fact that he had been so attentive and courteous after she had asked to break the engagement. So taking Naina's hand in hers, Naina was getting ready to leave, realizing that her plan was very desperate and reckless, and if her nanny Martha knew about it, she would have a heart attack. So if anything went wrong, she could be accused of insulting the ruling family, and frankly, she was a little ashamed to take advantage of Nain's youth, but anyone in that situation would be insolent. As she walked out of the manor, Melissa noticed that the crown prince was as beautiful as ever and looked incredible. However, she realized that her Nain was much more beautiful anyway, but when she walked out, the prince didn't even notice that she was there. But soon he did notice her, as well as Nain standing next to her. The girl asked him not to worry about it, because it was just her partner at the ball. The prince was in misunderstanding and confusion and hoping that she was joking because she was supposed to go with him. But the girl reminded him that he never wanted her to be his companion, so she thought that this time he would refuse her and found another gentleman. The prince did not understand where she had gone if the carriage was here, for as it turned out, he had prepared this old-fashioned, tasteless carriage with the two-headed serpent, the symbol of the ruling house, for her, which was a show-off, and annoyed her. So she said that the three of them riding in the imperial carriage was a bit humiliating, especially for the prince, and such awkward situations were not to her liking. Melissa was just happy, and it was nice to see the expression on the prince's face. And while she laughed gloatingly, she noticed that the same footman had seen everything again, thinking she was a bit out of her mind, and thinking that the girl needed to visit a physician. She was ashamed that he was always there when her emotions were running out, but anyway, it was just the beginning. As soon as they got to the ball, she would give the prince the most brutal torture. After all, they Koreans are good at it. When they finally arrived, Melissa noticed that everything was going even better than she had expected, as she looked into the hall and could already see the slanted glances directed in their direction and whispers. But it was not surprising, because the Duke was not visible. Melissa appeared with another man on her arm, and the prince's carriage was barely dragging behind them, which was a magnificent sight. And the cherry on the cake was that Melissa only pays attention to her bow, completely ignoring the prince's crown. It looked like a scene from a soap opera. Those who know her and the prince well pretend not to notice anything and just circle around the three of them like vultures. Having given a wave to the musicians, the prince tried his best to smooth the situation. Having seen the ghostly hint, the guests began to scatter, for before they had trampled each other's feet and hems trying to look at them during the dance. After that, except the prince offered her to dance, but the girl simply refused. She explained everything by the fact that her beau didn't want her to waltz with anyone but him. Besides, her father wouldn't approve of dancing with another man. The prince had already listened to the whole affair with a very surprised face, and said that she didn't realize that if she continued like that, it would not end well for them. Then he grabbed the hand of the first girl he could find and led her to dance. And Melissa didn't understand why he was bothering her if he ended up leaving with someone else anyway. After that, she thanked Nain for that, and she said that she would thank him later, even if it took all her savings to do it again after seeing his beautiful smile. Suddenly, however, the guy started acting strangely and turned around and just walked away. Melissa began to worry that she had done something wrong, or that the prince was burning him with his gaze. But when she looked at him, she noticed that the guy was now busy with more pleasant things. She couldn't understand why he ran away and looked very scared. I assumed that he ran to the restroom, but it was necessary to tell her directly since he had such an urgent matter. Then she calmed down and said that it was no problem. But an hour and 2 hours passed, and the girl didn't understand why he hadn't come back yet, because people had already started to notice that she was standing alone. But Nain is a good servant and understands the culture of the nobles, so she assumed that he understands how to behave at such events, and she was worried that he was lost since it was his first time in the palace. She thought the reason was that he had just left her here, but the ball would soon be over if it continued like this. She would be the only one left humiliated, and she decided to find the guy herself. She went to the palace to look for the guy, and realized that the prince was probably the problem, because the horror on Nain's face confirmed that his idiotic highness could have threatened the guy without Melissa seeing it. But she couldn't even look for him openly now. And if this continues, she'll be a pathetic villain who's been abandoned not only by her fiancé, but also by her lover, and she'll have to visit the men's room if he's not in the garden. But then she unexpectedly met Yuri, with her shiny golden curls down her back and big blue eyes like two bottomless oceans. She was like a delicate waterline blooming with moonlight radiance at first sight, charming everyone with her beauty, the protagonist of this novel. Cases of adoption by noble couples of commoners are not that rare. However, the adoption of Yuri by Elizabeth's family has become one of the main topics of conversation. The Elizabeth family is incredibly powerful, and all of their descendants are genius mages. If a child is adopted into this family, it means they have amazing magical powers. In addition, her low origin causes a lot of gossip among the people. She must be tired of it, but Melissa had more important things to do now, and she was going to get out of there as soon as possible. However, immediately she heard the voice of the crown prince, who realized she was there, and she didn't understand. Did he then find an excuse to leave the ballroom and make the wedding announcement while Nain wasn't around? However, it was now that she became the second the prince fell in love with Yuri. Their first meeting had taken place at the spring ball, and it was one of the key moments of the affair that had just come before her eyes. It was as if someone had whispered in her ear that she was only a minor character in the story, and now Melissa felt disgusted for some reason. Back home, Elizabeth was angry and frustrated because she had returned from the ball alone because she couldn't find Nain. But she was glad that the announcement of their wedding hadn't been made. However, this is definitely not to her credit. Even though everything was going according to plan, Melissa had not managed to embarrass the prince because the events for the guy are the best, and there was a feeling that all her efforts had gone down the drain. But she realized there was nothing she could do, for perhaps Nain had changed his mind. Besides, if she continued to look for him like the mad prince with the shoe, she would look more foolish than she already did. So she promised herself never to trust men again. At the same time, Nain was running through the forest, realizing that he had to get out of there as soon as possible, because if he was near Melissa, she would be caught up in all of this too. But then he met another guy who smilingly called him a blue disgrace to the entire wolf family and wondered why Nain was still alive. Now Melissa finally came to her senses. After a lot of calls from her nanny, March had traveled a long way to congratulate her on her impending wedding. With the permission of the Duke, decided to stay at the estate for a while. Now she decided that the reason for Melissa's behavior was that the prince had not announced the date of their ceremony. For sure she had been waiting for it for a long time, and asked her not to worry because she was sure that they would discuss everything later and everything would be fine. A few days ago, Melissa met the main character of the novel at the ball, and once again made sure that she was really in her lovers, and that it was impossible to influence the events of the plot. Of course, she didn't have to behave as described in the book, but Melissa's fate is the only thing she can change. However, no matter how hard she tried to spoil the prince in front of him, will still be flocked, sprinkled with rose petals, path to a bright future with Yura, and from all the realization of the girl lost all motivation. So she decided to just rest and enjoy her life. In any case, the engagement would take some time, and she didn't need to waste any more of her energy. Then, Martha suggested that they go out for some fresh air, for she had planned to take Melissa outside first thing in the morning, saying that she had prepared lunch for them and would like to have a picnic. Melissa was terrified and begged Jonah to help her and save her, for Martha was certainly a wonderful nanny, but she was a terrible cook. Martha was one of the few people Melissa cared about, and the nanny must have prepared tents, a table, and everything for her. She didn't want to spoil the moment, and was willing to sacrifice her health for her by eating her food. But then she was lucky, because she would not have to eat it all, as she would first have to deal with an uninvited guest, Jack Porton, one of the Yuri men, an overgrown toy terrier. The guy said hello and asked if she was stupid enough to bring men home indiscriminately. This guy had no manners at all. So Melissa asked him to go bark somewhere else and wondered how he dared to barge into the Duke's property if he had gotten rabies. Among the Faithwolves, Jack is second in power and influence, unshakably convinced that nasty people are no match for him. But Melissa wasn't going to stand by while he wrecked everything around him. They were in their own manner. There was March and the other servants, if the man dared to do harm, but she was confused, for it seemed he was not entirely hostile. But there was a silent, magical attack that belonged to her brother Jake, but Jake didn't fire his gun to protect the servants, nor to punish the stranger who had invaded the house. The wolf belonged to the dog family, and Jake was allergic to dog hair. Melissa watched and realized that they were fighting like cat and dog, and the two boys were about to turn the estate into ruin. And if she had a gun in her hand, she would have solved everything quickly, because they didn't know how scary she was in Neva. Melissa saw the servants panicking, and half of the garden was already destroyed, and also scared March, worried for her life, became very angry. She shouted with all her might and told them to calm down and stop, and asked what the two were doing here, and if they were going to kill each other, they should not have involved the others, and should not have thought that she would ignore their behavior. One was trespassing on private property and attacking the owners, and the other was a family member who didn't even bother defending the house. She knew they probably weren't taking her seriously, but in her father's absence, she was in charge, and when she said that, the guys were paralyzed with terror and couldn't even move. Turning to Jack, she told him to pay them an official visit, since he had something to tell her. She wasn't in the mood to deal with it now, so she told him to get out of there before his hide became her new rug. Then, turning to her brother, she told him to get down from heaven to earth, and asked him if he could read normally that his servants were shaking with fear and the estate was crumbling, and he was so perfectly fulfilling his duties as heir that their ancestors were ready to come out of the grave and dance for him. They both deluded themselves into thinking they were the strongest and needed to put their abilities where they were needed, and she didn't understand how they could be considered the best sniper and the greatest werewolf if the weak suffered because of them. After she finally chased them away, Melissa went home to rest, glad that it was the first time the guys had heard her, and she was sure it was because they hadn't expected to face her fury. And if the men had any brains at all, they would realize that they were many times stronger than she was, and her words would stop working on them when they realized that she was just a fragile girl who couldn't do anything to them. And now she was amazed, because all the servants were gathered around her, as they had always avoided talking to Melissa, trying to minimize their contact with her. But now they were very touched when they saw how she had stood up for them and were very grateful to her for helping them. Melissa realized that working for her family was an extreme job, and it must be hard to serve the Duke's family where every member had a bad temper. Jake is the heir, but he can't even provide security for his servants, and if the low wages were low, she's sure they'd all quit because the job not only requires tremendous physical effort, but also affects their mental health. And since Melissa had protected them this time, it was no wonder they were behaving this way, because frankly, she was very angry. But it was a good feeling. Melissa hoped that the guys would also understand normal language, and if Jack came again and made a spectacle of himself, he would definitely cause damage to the estate and hurt people, so she had a new idea. She asked Yona to contact the Duke and ask him to provide her with the best swordsmanship teacher in the Empire, because there are two ways to tame Jack. The first is to melt his heart with boundless care and love as Yuri did in the novel, and the second is to surpass the puppy in strength and crush it. She already imagined how the nobles will start talking about the fact that the daughter of the Duke is about to get married and walks with a sword, because men do not like such men. And since she is already tall, and now she will build up muscles and completely disfigured. Naturally, everyone at court would ridicule such behavior, and if it were not for the recent incident, Melissa would never have known about her abilities and rejoiced at how wonderful it was to be gifted at least in something. She had hoped to learn a couple of tricks, but thought she could do better at this rate. However, she was interrupted by a letter from the Porton family. The common last name that all werewolves carry is Porton, and the fact that it's tied with a red thread means that it was sent by the Porton family's only red-haired shifter, Jack. The boy had indeed sent the official message. It had been almost a month since his memorable visit, and she couldn't believe he'd had the patience to wait for the message to get here since their estates were too remote to exchange letters quickly. Speaking of which, in the novel, the puppy arrived at the estate around the end of summer. But now it was spring, which meant he hadn't met Yuri yet, and she didn't understand why events were unfolding so quickly. She wondered if the wolf was still awake, but he still hadn't woken up because he needed a lot more time to recover. Melissa hoped that Yona wasn't lying for a raise when she claimed to be able to heal animals, but she had a feeling that this handsome Nain was still unconscious. She wouldn't know. However, now she had to focus on organizing the rainbow reception for the guest, so she asked for a dinner of mostly chicken breasts, as she planned to gain weight, and then go to work out. A month later in early summer, Melissa walked into her father's office, reminding him that she reminded him last time that she would not stand by if he tried to stop the engagement from ending. However, it was said that he had a hand in spreading false rumors about her, and even if the crown prince himself asked for it, he did not understand how he could do such a thing to his own daughter. Recalling old sins might be petty, but by these actions it was necessary to find a pretext to get what she wanted. Therefore, she wanted a summer vacation, and leave in this house a minimum of servants to the rest to give vacation pay. The Duke was shocked, and Melissa realized that she was already behaving like a crown prince, or even a level of insolence Yona from which her father was a little dumbfounded. And she also asked him to increase her salary, and the man still listened to her requests. However, the reason for this is not because she was so nice just in front of you, is a professional in the field of persuasion. Melissa realized that they were treating the employees like garbage. That's why she decided to give them a break. Besides, she didn't want anyone here to get in the way when the Wolfman came to visit. After all, it is today that Jack Porton will light up their lives with his presence. The hardest thing was to send Jonah on vacation, because if you leave this walking disaster with Jack, something terrible will happen. Now she was helped by a girl named Heine, who was very kind and sweet and a good maid, who took the initiative to replace Yona for the duration of her vacation. However, she felt out of place with her. But they had 10 minutes left before the appointed time, and they had to tell the guards to notify Melissa when the man with the red hair showed up at the gate. However, if he didn't arrive on time, or if he broke into the manor in the same way as last time, she told him to tell him that she would blow his head off his shoulders. But she was surprised when she realized that the guy had just forgotten about the etiquette of jumping over the gates again, because apparently he thought he was God coming down from heaven. The man did not understand how an ordinary man and a girl could throw away his werewolf, but the girl explained that what had happened was only the result of her hard training. But of course it was a brazen lie. The truth was that her unremarkable sword was one of the treasures of the Basilius family. She couldn't say that it was a mysterious religion that ordinary people knew nothing about, just that long ago the emperor had forgotten where he had left his weapon, and the existence of the ball had been forgotten. In the second half of the novel, Prince Ion found a super toothpick and became the best sword of the empire. But Melissa just returned it. In other words, this magical sword is the best ability of the main character, which added a lot of strength. Then she asked the guy what he wanted, because he obviously didn't break in for a cup of tea. He pointed to the scars on his face and said that the werewolf's regeneration was good at dealing with moderate injuries, but that wounds from other shifters left scars. He explained that this gift had been given to him by Nain on the day of the bloody ball, or to be more precise, he was a shapeshifter who had cut off his tongue and ripped out his fangs, so he could no longer be called a shifter. Jack wished he hadn't cut his throat right away, because he hadn't expected them to run into each other, and judging by their cooing at the ball, they'd gotten very close. And if she was hiding it now, she should have given it to him so he wouldn't have any unnecessary problems. She called her maid and told her to leave the manor because she had to sort out and teach the boy manners. After a while, she asked him if he still wanted her to give him Nain. The man explained that he was sure he was here, because it was obvious. As soon as the man heard that he had run away to the city, he looked for him all spring, but couldn't find a single hair, and only noticed him when one of his wolves recognized the boy at the ball. He planned to kill him that day, but he scratched Jack and fled in an unknown direction, and since Nain doesn't know the city well, he could only go to the house of the girl he was at the ball with. And that day, Jack just wanted to find out if he was hiding here, but suddenly her brother showed up, and then Melissa came and threw him out, so he came back to find out about it. The girl was surprised that because of these foolish assumptions, he broke into the Duke's house twice and made a fuss. Because if he was sure he wasn't here, all his efforts were in vain. Nain was indeed here, but she wasn't trying to hide him, and she wasn't going to give him away, as he was now one of his men, and she didn't like to share what she thought was hers after all. If she was called Hellcat, she had to behave accordingly. Melissa remembered that day when talking to the Duke, she had also asked to hire a personal butler, and the Duke had been dumbfounded when he found out that he was a commoner. Since in this society all servants belong to the noble house, any attack on them would be considered an insult to their house, and after all, Jack could not harm Nain since he was now subordinate to their estate. So she brought him to the Duke and told him that this was the man she wanted as a butler. He was a commoner, but there was no need for letters of recommendation as he was her vouch for him. She also reassured her father that he didn't need to worry, because as he could see, Nain wouldn't be able to tell any of his secrets, and if anything happened, Melissa would take full responsibility for him since he was her man now. However, after they entered the room, the girl asked Nain to close the door, because she felt very bad, and at the same second she fell down, realizing that the guy looked more shocked than she thought. A while later, she didn't realize where she was and who she was when she saw a little girl crying because no one was hugging her. When Melissa offered to hug her, the girl refused, saying that she wanted to see Prince Ian. She loved him very much, but when he became her husband, she could see him as much as she wanted. Then the girl said that since she couldn't bring her John, she didn't need her anymore. But Melissa noticed that she was no longer crying and explained that she was a big girl who didn't need a crown prince. The girl went on to say that she didn't care what others said because she loved the prince. And she also wanted to get closer to her brother, and she liked dogs and wanted to get one in the future. But wolves are scary. The girl just wanted to be loved. And then she turned to her and said that Melissa was a different Melissa, but she should not forget that she was still Melissa Potterbrot. After that, Melissa began to hear voices calling her, but the girl turned to her and said that she was different. She was the one who did not want empty worship from others, and the one who did not tolerate injustice to herself. So who can move forward, herself, without the help of others? This life belongs only to her now. Waking up, Melissa learned that Yuri Elizabeth had been captured, and most likely because she was the protagonist, a handsome man was going to pop up to save the day. She remembered realizing that something similar was in the novel itself. But unlike Roman, the male characters remained as horrible as before, so Melissa decided to save her herself. After she had dealt with all of them, though she hadn't killed anyone, she had broken their arms and legs so they wouldn't be able to attack anyone anytime soon for sure, and held out her hand to Melissa to help her up. But she didn't think about the fact that the girl might be afraid of blood. In response to her shocked look, she explained that the blood was not hers. But Yuri said that half of the blood on the girl she had coughed up was a big problem. The question was whether Melissa's magic and the werewolf energies in her body made her internal organs do a dance battle, and what would happen if she swung her sword like a madwoman. However, now, as Melissa tried to convince everyone that everything was okay, she fainted again, but kept making attempts to get up. Soon, she woke up in Elizabeth's manor. Yor was sitting next to her, and she noticed that the girl was delirious again, and though she was sorry, she had to put Melissa back to sleep. Melissa realized that it was Yuri who had knocked her out and explained that she was just kidding, because maybe it was because of her long rest. But she felt fine and was madly surprised when she found out that she had slept for 4 days and everyone was worried sick. Yuri said that her companions were very worried, especially the blue-haired guy was waiting for her outside the door, and since Melissa was getting worse every time she saw her then, since yesterday she forbade him to come in. Melissa smiled as she realized it was Nain and thanked her for watching over her all this time, but the girl thanked her for saving her life. And then Melissa realized that this was her chance, because Elizabeth's family are magical fanatics. They are like werewolves, as mysterious and closed. They have built an estate in the desert lands, and no one can enter it, not even the emperor. Melissa had planned to just hide near the entrance to the manor and wait for Yuri to arrive, but who knew that not only would she get there, but the head of the family would welcome her, and thus half of her plan had already been accomplished. She thought she was at the bottom of the ladder, but she had actually hit the jackpot because she said that as Yuri could see, her health was not the best, and she was suffering from an uncommon illness, and only Yuri could help her. After Melissa explained the situation to her, Yuri said that it might work, but since she had never encountered such a situation and wanted to find out more about it, she went to the library. When she left, Melissa finally exhaled, realizing that as soon as her condition improved, she would ask her about Nain, since recovering the language was a difficult task. Plus, she'd have to be extremely careful when using human magic on werewolves, but in the novel, Yuri once healed Jack, so it's entirely possible. The door opened a little, and Melissa was nervous to see that her sword wasn't there, but then Nain jumped on her bed in the form of a wolf and looked at her worriedly. The girl was extremely indignant because running around a place full of mages in the form of a wolf was stupid, but he was so cute that she couldn't even be mad at him. Nain was like a crying baby. If anyone saw them, they would think she was mocking him. When he cried in animal form, she felt doubly guilty. However, immediately Yuri walked into the room not sure where the wolf came from. Melissa explained that he was her pet. Melissa explained that it was her pet and that she liked strong animals and had one as a pet. Yuri didn't understand her because she had been injured in a werewolf and had a wolf as a pet. But after thinking for a while, she asked her to speak frankly and assumed that it was the werewolf that had wounded her and that it was here to attack her. And at the same moment Nain roared, Melissa realized that she had better find her sword so she could hit herself on the head to faint again. Normally, Nain and Yuri are wise and sensible, but now their behavior is completely opposite. Elizabeth's family is full of talented mages who are not mages. If they meet a werewolf whose energy is completely opposite to magic, they can react in two ways. Either they become extremely hostile, or curiosity eats away at them. And so, in other words, revealing one's identity to members of the Elizabeth family is a perverse form of suicide. Nevertheless, Nain had acted recklessly since he hadn't seen her in 4 days, and Yuri had noticed that he was different from other werewolves since he didn't have fangs and couldn't bite or hurt her. But Yuri thought Melissa still looked sickly and didn't understand how he could make trouble for her when she was in such a state, because she was already in a lot of trouble. She also didn't understand what the Clown Prince was doing because he was Melissa's fiancé. And despite all this, Melissa didn't get angry and remained kind enough to save her, and now she needed her because Yuri had to protect her. But Melissa asked them to calm down, because it was not what they thought, because this werewolf was not dangerous, he was one of her people. And then she asked Navin to leave his room, because she needed to talk to Yuri alone. Yuri calmed down and explained that she had found a way to help Melissa in an ancient book. When two opposing energies collide in the same body, they can cause negative effects on a person. In this situation, she must choose one side, thus suppressing the other in the most effective way possible. From this, Yuri could tell that they would need a lot of magic, and that was because Melissa had almost none right now. But she promised that she would heal her when forced to transfer magic could be a little painful. Of course, Melissa always said something, and then she got for it. Because it was really painful. The pain that Melissa felt during the transfer of magic, and comparable to what she got when she went to get water in the morning and hit her little finger on the leg of the table, then stepped on a Lego piece and cut her finger on a calendar page, and lastly when the phone fell on her face. In other words, it hurt so bad it was embarrassing to say the least. As expected from a super strong character like Yuri, she was still sitting there happy even after transferring so much magic, and Melissa was feeling much better. Melissa then asked how Yuri ended up in the forest, but the girl didn't know how to explain to her that she was hiding there from her fiancé where those bandits had caught up with her. However, she didn't have to answer anything, as the whole estate was suddenly serenaded by loud serenades, and then they went to the balcony to understand what was going on, because there is only one person in the empire who is able to throw away so much money. He has a beautiful expression and extraordinary wealth, but underneath that warm and pleasant exterior is a two-faced psycho who has hit Yuri twice and even tried to lock her up. He is the last of the 4 male leaders of Peacock Melody. The novel in which she is reborn is called Guys I Love. In it had 4 male characters, and as expected of the characters, each has their own talents, unique personality. Kron the prince is not only kind and handsome, but also a good swordsman. Jake the mysterious cold sniper. Jack the werewolf filled with masculinity, attractiveness, bright spirit. And the last of them was in front of them now. He was the owner of Peacock, the biggest company in the empire, and also filthy rich. He is the most eccentric of all 4 characters, is everyone's favorite. Even when she herself read scenes with him, she folded her arms across her chest and savored his every word. Afterwards, the guy pointed to a huge bouquet of roses and said that he had tried his best and she should accept it, but she almost agreed. And though Yuri threw these roses in his face, she realized that she had made a wise decision, as it was dangerous to act rudely in front of Peacock. However, immediately to her surprise, the girl responded very rudely to him by refusing the flowers, and Melissa tried to shut her mouth and took her words back. Yuri had made a mess of things, and now they were in big trouble. But she didn't think she was to blame for the situation because it could have gotten anyone out. It seems this is not the first time Peacock has paid Yuri a visit like this, and eventually she just ran out of patience. The reason Yuri can't be in a story with him is because he is aggressive, obsessive, and complete. This means that if Yuri does something wrong, it will lead to a bad ending and an alternate ending where there will be bloodshed. However, after the guy asked who Melissa was and what she was doing there, the girl introduced herself and said she was his rival from now on and did what she should have done a long time ago. She was amused by Peacock's actions only because they were fictional, but she needed to repent because that was the only way she could pay for her sins of the past, because she thought that rapists and obsessive men were very attractive. So she decides to count the number of horrible guys she's met along the way. The first one was a complete womanizer who was always going left. That is a prince's crony. The second is Sniper, who seems to have shot his manners. The third is a complete fool who can't think. And the last is a complete psycho who constantly spends his fortune. That's why she couldn't let these crazy guys get hold of a sweet little angel like Yuri. Even though they were trash, each of them was still a famous public figure, and Yuri would have a hard time getting away from them and would most likely fall into their clutches. Melissa assumed that if she was nice, they would act like complete fools with her, but still not be able to look at Yuri, because even so, throughout her life, the men had acted differently. However, none of them ended up being a good person. She may have been a villain, but she never provoked them intentionally. Considering all their bad attitudes towards her, she could say for sure that there would be no love in the future, although she couldn't say for sure that it would be the same with Yuri. And so even if Yuri shows them her disgust, what could she do as a reincarnator who read this novel? So who is guilty in front of her, and as a villain who wants to be her friend, she should save her from these men. Then they walked back into the room where Nain was already waiting for them, looking at the girl with a confused look that made her laugh at how rude the look on the guy's face was. Melissa realized that if you think about it, the fact that she had gotten rid of Peacock was a good reason to ask Yuri to cure Nain. Of course, she didn't have to threaten him, but she would kill two birds with one stone. Melissa couldn't understand what was going on with Nain, because just looking at them, he cried and ran away, thinking that he wasn't interested in Melissa anymore, and she wanted to be with Yuri. After that day, he started acting even stranger. He looked at her as if she had broken his heart, smiled bitterly, averted his eyes or grabbed the vest in front of his heart with his hand, and left as soon as she wanted to talk to him. Sometimes he would come in and look at Yuri and her and nod to himself and leave. She really wanted to know the reason for the guy's behavior, but she had more important things to do right now. Peacock and his men have a special relationship with Elizabeth's house. It's a place just full of mages while outside and quite difficult to meet. So it's obvious what happened next. Peacock and his subordinates started chasing Yuri. Peacock started by setting up a camp right in front of the estate. And although the family noticed the guy who brazenly took a place in front of the estate, they didn't kick him out. Since he owned the largest company in the empire, one wrong move in his direction, and he would cut off all of Elizabeth's cash flow. Even the great mages of Elizabeth's lineage can't create food. So, in a long war, Peacock will win for sure. But now there is someone who can turn the tide, and that is Melissa. Then he ran and asked her to come down to his pathetic commoner. Since he asked her to, Melissa decided to do it. The truth is that she was prepared for a peaceful encounter with the Pico and the fact that he might attack her. She just brushed him off because she was disappointed, because it took him 3 days to get the courage to challenge her to a duel. Yuri saw that Melissa was coming down to him. She was worried because it could be dangerous and wanted to go with her. But the girl refused, because it would be worse if they went together. She convinced Yuri that she was actually very strong and could not lose to Peacock, so she would get rid of him and ask him to fulfill one of her requests. Melissa never realized it while reading the novel, but she thinks Yuri is too emotional. She was worried even when she went down there. When she said hello to the guy he was trying to look nice, he was wearing a hand-tailored tailcoat, an imported expensive silk cape, and very expensive pants. They were the most high-end brands that were expensive even for him. There was one reason why Melissa provoked Peacock so much. While Yuri forbade her to do so, Peacock's interest soured. He lashed out at Yuri and then imprisoned her, saying it was all a consequence of his love for her. He's a strange and unconventional character who probably wouldn't have done anything if it weren't for love. But despite that now, he challenged her to a duel, and she was sure she wouldn't lose. No matter what the guy did, she planned to just destroy him. However, she was surprised when he threw his handkerchief at her, thus challenging her to a duel. That's why he wanted her to come down, because it wouldn't be very valiant if he threw his handkerchief challenge on the balcony, but in the end, it doesn't look valiant, even though he wanted to fight her. However, he announced that they would not have such a duel, because they are completely different and wanted to be at least a little more civilized, therefore offered to participate in a discussion with her, and if he wins in it, he will win the duel. Because he said that if he won, Melissa would leave the place, because he must have thought that if she was not here, she would get Yuri, and if he lost, he would leave the estate. Melissa thought that even if he didn't have a conscience, the fight should be fair, because he wasn't so petty as to make the rules favorable to himself, because it wasn't a matter of conscience or pride. The guy grinned and announced to her that it would be a quiz. Everyone should buy what he considers the most precious thing in the whole world, and who will be the first to guess what the other one bought will win. Melissa realized that he was even more pathetic than she thought. It was as if he'd read too many novels to come up with such a stupid idea. Yuri Elizabeth is a judge who knows the subjects of both sides. Yuri is impartial and has no bias. If a player answers correctly, Yuri will immediately announce it. Any use of magic or auxiliary tools is forbidden. If a player's item is abstract or inexpensive, he loses. Starting with Peacock Melody, and he asks 20 questions. After the question is asked, the second player answers yes or no. The one who first says the correct answer is the winner. And if the player with the more expensive item answers the other player's question incorrectly, a rematch can be requested. Who would have thought that the rules would be so unfair? But the duel would take place in 4 days, and Peacock even set the date himself, while Melissa continued to read a million rules. She's been reading the novella, so she could easily win, but she is more competent when it comes to warfare and brute force. However, as with anything, an opponent can be dealt a critical blow. If she could defeat him in a battle with favorable terms for her, he wouldn't be back for a while, and she didn't care what kind of thing the guy brought. After all, he'd never guess her thing, but there was only one problem. Melissa didn't know what to do for 4 days. Ladies should know about culture and literature. So she thought about reading a couple of books and hoping that Yuri had left their novels or something like that. But when she looked through the books, Melissa saw that they were only scientific literature and hoped that she would have something to do, because if she continued like this, she would go crazy. However, Nain knocked on her door. He had been avoiding her lately, but he was still doing his butler duties, and he wasn't even a second late in bringing her tea. So she decided it would be nice to spend some time with her sweet wolf cub, and sat him down on a chair and told him that she would be serving him today, and that no objections would be accepted since they hadn't talked much lately. She told him not to be nervous, because with her there was no need to be so tense, and then she poured him some tea, joking and telling him not to be afraid, because he was not poisoned. However, after the guy started writing something in his notebook, she was afraid that her joke was so unfunny. However, Nain wrote that if it was Melissa who poured the tea for her, he wouldn't mind drinking the poison. The girl was confused, but said that she would never poison him anyway. But he was a fool, because if you realize that something is poisoned, you should never drink it. And in that case, he should have just thrown the cup in her face. She realized that it was too much for him, because he was ready to die on her. And it was just for the fact that she supported him a little when it was hard. And even though she couldn't help him, she cared a lot. Nain didn't understand, since when he became so worried around her and why he couldn't treat Melissa as his mistress. Lady Melissa had already publicly announced a duel with this man, and he thought that perhaps this was the best way to declare his love for her. However, he realized that this was all very inappropriate, and thought about how he could contain these feelings within himself. He just needed to hide his feelings deep inside, so he just asked her to take care of him. At the same time, Peacock was furious, and although he didn't want to play the role of a noble prince, he had no choice but to bring a letter with a sword that Melissa always carries, which was her answer to the quiz. As it turned out, it was her maid Yona, the daughter of the fallen marquis, who needs money more than anyone else to survive and restore the family honor. 4 days ago, Peacock was surprised to receive a letter from the maid Melissa, who was willing to help him for money, and even sent him locks of her mistress's hair as proof. But after he got the information about this maid, it became clear that she was very mercantile, and he decided to agree. Because after all, people's loyalty is worthless, it can always be destroyed by simple money. Finally, the day of the quiz came. They were all very busy, and Yuri decided to start studying magic. And it was a pity that in this competition, she only plays the role of a judge. After Peacock arrived, they decided to start the competition. Yuri explained that she knew their items and they would be put in these containers. She could not let them guess the items by their size. Therefore, regardless of the physical properties of the containers are the same. This would be proof that her final decisions were without bias, and since they knew the rules, they could start asking their questions. The first to start was Peacock, and he immediately asked if her item was worth in the neighborhood of 50 million zlotys, to which the girl answered confusedly. And with her next question, she also hit the mark. Then Peacock began to ask strange questions because his questions went from precise and concrete to vague and abstract. And the strangest thing was that they all hit the mark, even though he could not know the answer. After that, he asked her if the legendary sword was her object. The girl made a confused face and asked how he understood it. And the guy explained that she had to keep more reliable people around her because there was a leak of information. But Melissa grinned and said that he was wrong, and that it was quite a surprise considering that Peacock is a smart character, how he could fall into such a trap. Yuri, interrupting their argument, replied that Melissa's item was not a legendary sword, and he was indeed mistaken. Melissa planned a small trap for Peacock because she was bored, and creating such a trap doesn't take much time and effort. They decided to make it look like there was a traitor among them who sent the guy a letter. And it would be funny if he got caught, and if he didn't, it would be no big deal. They also decided to ask for money for this favor, and Yona was perfect for the role of a traitor. Melissa was getting worried because Yona was already talking like she was thinking about it. But in her eyes, it was just money, and she was really being loyal because no one was paying her more than Melissa at the moment. In any case, their trap was too suspicious, and Melissa wasn't sure it would work. And when Peacock sent the letter with the agreement and the money they were asking to believe, it was hard. But she didn't get that money for nothing, because in this world, only those who are very close to her know that her sword is legendary, acquired incredibly valuable information. The guy could not believe that she deceived him, but Melissa pretended that she did not understand what she was saying. And if someone lied to him when he spied on her to find out her thing, it was an unfair duel. Then it was Melissa's turn, and she asked if his thing was blue. But when Peacock said no, Yuri interrupted him and said he shouldn't have lied because it was in the rules of the game. Melissa didn't understand how he had decided to lie in front of the judge and questioned whether this guy had a brain. If you think Brainy Rich Man is just a title the author gave him, and in the novel, Peacock rarely had a chance to show his individual abilities. He overcame any obstacles in just a couple of scenes, doing so easily and effortlessly, as befits a protagonist. He even became the wealthiest man in the Empire within a few chapters. And it was absolutely irrelevant how these characters were described in the novel, they were always limited by the author's imagination. As such, Peacock is a simple character spelled out as a genius, and it wasn't a wise decision from the start. This is not surprising, and there is probably a reason why all the characters she meets are so different from her expectations, because she only saw them as doppelgangers from the novella. After she stepped in and met characters she thought were normal, she realized that underneath their lightweight appearance was true stupidity and wretchedness. Then, Peacock began to bombard her with a lot of questions about her thing, but none of them really hit the mark, not knowing what to do next. Melissa knew that his item would be really hard to guess, but based on what she had read in the novel, the blue jewelry that appears in the legends was the jewelry that Peacock had given to Yuri during part 2 of the novel then. He had confessed his feelings for her, and when she named the jewelry, he confirmed that her guess was correct. However, even though the rooster lost, he refused to leave because he needed to find out Melissa's item, since he assumed that she had fooled him without even preparing a valuable item, and he would decide if his item was really valuable and rare. Then Melissa agreed to open her drawer, and Peacock was furious because there was a piece of paper in it. If only what was written on it was the answer, because it would be quite a problem to put her item in that drawer. Melissa decided to explain to them that no jewel could compare with her beauty. Then what could be the most expensive thing in the world? For no matter how much money Peacock had, she was sure that nothing was worth more than she was. And how dare anyone put a price tag on her? Then the most valuable thing in the world could be none other than Melissa Potterbrat. The guy was furious, but Melissa replied that as far as she could remember, there were no rules against displaying yourself as an object, and they could also claim that a real person was worth less than jewelry. Then Melissa said that it was time for the boy to go back home, and by the evening his men were packing up all their belongings and dismantling the settlement. Later, a happy Yuri came running to her thanking her for all this, because thanks to Melissa, she got the laugh of a lifetime. Yuri was hysterical. It was a little too much, but better that than seeing her cry. It may sound like a silly melodrama plot, but Yuri was insanely beautiful when she had a smile on her face, and the very fact that Melissa could see her smile felt like a reward. After Peacock had left their settlement, Melissa had already gained all her strength, and it was time for her to return home. However, she had one request for Yuri that the girl was happy to fulfill. Apparently, she was very happy because Melissa had helped her with Peacock and explained that her butler was a werewolf and that it was true that his tongue had been cut off and his fangs ripped out, and asked if there was any way to heal him, for example, to restore him completely or make him grow a new one. Yuri thought that with magic it wouldn't be that hard on a normal human, but since it was a werewolf, there was still a lot to consider. She explained to Melissa that his body might not accept magic. Even the slightest mistake could cause things to go wrong. There were scenes in the novel where Yuri treated Jack's wounds. She'd never done anything like grow a new tongue or teeth, so treating Nain would depend entirely on her skill. Yuri realized that it would be difficult to use magic directly, but there was a way out, and assumed that she was the first in the Empire to do something like this. So it would take her some time, which meant it was possible after all. Melissa realized that this was the end of things at Elizabeth Manor, and that once she returned to her estate, she would probably suffer from idleness again. But it was her home nonetheless, so she missed it a little. But Yuri stopped her by saying that her father had invited her to a family dinner, and before she went back to her homeland, she could have some fun with them one last time. Melissa was a little surprised that Baron Elizabeth had invited her, but he adored his daughter, and it would be unseemly of her to refuse. So she postponed her departure until tomorrow morning. Melissa realized it only after she came here, but she's the type of person who is lazy if they have to do something, because in her past life she was primarily focused on her studies in middle and high school. She was also busy doing assignments and drinking in college, but that wasn't enough to enjoy because she was about to be reincarnated. Maybe it was all about dealing with Peacock, but picking out an outfit for the evening you try things for tomorrow. She had a feeling she didn't want to bother with all that and decided to lie down for just 10 minutes. However, she woke up and realized it had been 3 hours. Baron Elizabeth Yuri's adoptive father was a total boomer like Duke Podobrot. He also had one glaring flaw, was his endless offers of a drink. The girl rushed into the hall, realizing that she was already late enough and she would like to refuse him. But it would be wrong and disrespectful to refuse his offer in front of all these people, because as a punishment for her lateness, he offered her a drink for it. That was one of Baron Elizabeth's faults, considering what he had managed to do with those mages. She could safely say that he was a master of intoxicating others, because the others were already drunk. It was like a dinner with co-workers where the boss kept pouring soju for his employees, except this glass looked more like a bowl. Melissa wasn't a drinker in her past life. He couldn't even imagine how Melissa's body would feel when it came to drinking. If it turned out that her current body couldn't handle even 1 cup of this strong wine, it could go down in history as one of the most amazing moments of her life, and she hoped someone would save her. After that, she did accept the glass from him with ease, drinking it all, realizing that the moment she would leave this bowl empty would be the start of the party. After a while, Melissa sat in a chair watching the others who were already drunk and crawling around the room. And so the final winner of the whole event was Melissa. She never thought she could drink so easily with this body and didn't understand why she was so worried. Now she was fed up with the wine and the entertainment, so she wanted to find the others and get out of here. She was sure that Yona would carefully watch her alcohol consumption and that Nain should be fine because he didn't like wine. Yuri, the protagonist, needed to maintain her honor and pride, so she wanted to just ignore what was going on, hoping that her insides were fine. So she started wandering around the hall looking for her people, and then Nain came at her, hugging her tightly, which Melissa didn't expect, realizing that the guy seemed to be a little out of it. But then she saw Yona, hoping she would save her, but she was dumbfounded because she didn't recognize her. But as it turned out, the girl had won it all on a bet with some drunken magicians. Melissa asked her to help, because Nain looked pretty drunk and very heavy, but the girl could scratch her gold ring if she used her hands. After a while, Melissa dragged him to the room with difficulty and put him on the bed, noticing that maybe the guy was uncomfortable, so she decided to take off his clothes. While she was doing this, she convinced herself that she was not undressing him with strange intentions. It was purely for moral reasons, but for some reason it seemed to her that she was doing something indecent. However, at some point the guy stretched out his arms and held her tightly in his arms, but luckily she managed to get out, leaving the guy peacefully asleep. She was glad that no one had seen what had just happened, because they would have thought it a little strange, but she decided to stop being distracted and go pack her things. Pushing all those thoughts aside and convincing herself that what she had done was comfort a dog who had had a nightmare. Last night, after the banquet dinner, the mages who later came to their senses with magic had cleared the place where the feast had been held very quickly. Yuri must have been pretty drunk too, but she did her best to help cure those who had migraines from the hangover. After last night, Melissa was told about her drinking habits. She turned into an apologetic robot and kept saying that Melissa must have been as disappointed in her as she was in Elizabeth's family. So now going home, Melissa thought that if Yuri was really sorry about this, she would appreciate it if the next time the Baron invited her to a banquet, she would refuse her father on her behalf. When they left, it turned out that they were quite far from their carriage, for mages usually just use magic to travel, so the carriage house was far away. The long distance from here to the carriage house is a problem. What's worse is how Melissa has to hold this wolf who is still full of shame. He honestly thinks he doesn't deserve to be her butler, and he's very stubborn because no matter how many times Melissa tells him it's okay, he won't listen to her. At some point, Melissa noticed that Nain's jacket was covered in wool. He had to keep a close eye on it to make sure no one discovered who he was, and then the guy started pulling his jacket off. Melissa couldn't believe it, but asked Nain to do it again because she realized that her brother was hiding in the bushes. When he came out of there, Melissa had one suspicion why he was here, but it was so horrible that she didn't want to assume that he was here to chase after Yuri. When Jack said he just wanted to see her, Melissa explained to him that it still counted as stalking since he went to someone else's house and stayed there without any notice. Never mind, that he just wanted to see them. Did he really think that if he embellished the crime, it would be romantic? But then the Crown Prince appeared on the path and didn't expect to see her because he thought she had already left their estate. The girl realized that she shouldn't have been so relaxed after she kicked Peacock out because there were too many guys. Now Melissa was saying that if this continued, the first thing she would look for the next time she was invited to Elizabeth's family's tea party would be her sword. And the reason for that was the boys sitting at the table with her. After all the chaos with Peacock, she had taken it upon herself to get rid of these men, which meant that it was clear that Yuri would die as a toilet bowl surrounded by these men. Besides, if she just let them get close to Yuri, they would end up dumping her several times anyway. She wasn't going to become more of a saint than Yuri, or turn into the villain that men constantly ignore her as she was destined to become. They leave her with only one choice but to rid Yuri of all evil men and live her life her own way. If anyone thought it was unfair, they should have paid attention so she wouldn't be ashamed of her title. One day she realized that she had started following these scum whenever they had the chance to meet Yuri and did her best to thwart their efforts. Now she was glad that there weren't many people here because it would have been difficult to carry out her plans while fearing the other nobles, since the Elizabeths are very privileged and other aristocrats are not allowed to enter the manor. It would be great to put each of these guys in their place, especially since they never listen to anyone and act on their own. Now Melissa was drinking tea, and Yuri told her that she had made this tea from new herbs that she had discovered while making medicine, meaning healing magic for Nain, that she had asked her for last time. And as it turned out, it was already finished. As expected of this heroine, it hadn't been long since Melissa had asked her for it, but she had already made them, and she could get them now, or well after the tea party. However, the Crown Prince intervened in their conversation because he thought it was rude of Yuri to make her imperial guest feel lonely. She had called him herself, and he was very sad that the two of them were whispering amongst themselves, especially since one of the women was his fiancé. Melissa could have asked why Yura was having shingles with these guys when she was clearly not comfortable with them. But she didn't, because she already knew she had no choice. She was a heroine, so she was destined to go through such an experience with all the leading men. However, Melissa couldn't stand all the polite talk and just told the guys that they were so disgusting that the girls had no desire to even talk to them. And since she had completely ruined everyone's mood, she decided to take responsibility for it all and get them all safely home right now. She finally did it and watched Yuri laughing again. Melissa also took her elixir that she had prepared for Nain and went home. Yuri realized that every day was becoming very fun, and it was all thanks to the police. That's why she hoped that this time she could escape from this hellish curse. When Melissa was already home, she turned to Nain, wondering if he was busy. But when he said no, she realized he was lying because she knew he was busy with the housework. But it didn't matter, so she decided to remind him later. She took him by the hand and led him outside, showing him the best place to look at the moon and stars, watching the boy's admiring gaze. To be honest, the roof was a good place to look at the stars, but they never went there because Jake was there a lot. But really, they went there to put Nain in a good mood. She meant that she could just give him the elixir, but she wanted to hear his voice first, and thought it would be nice to hear his impression of the scenery. Then held out to him the magical medicine that would help restore his tongue and fangs to its one-of-a-kind item, and she was surprised that even now he didn't have any suspicions about the medicine, and the thing was that Nain would always trust her. Looking at his confused expression, she explained that after all villains always take care of their people, Nain had never belonged to anyone before, as no one wanted him. He wasn't strong or fierce enough, and he was too good for a werewolf, so he was never accepted. Everyone thought he was just an embarrassment to their clan, and the fangs and tongue he had were wasted. When he was forced to kneel before the head porter after Jack's accusation, and when he wandered the streets after the two escaped them, he pretended not to care, just put up with all the hostility and accepted it. He no longer had any hope of being loved, or hope that anyone would accept him because no one would be on his side anyway, but now someone had finally claimed him as their own. All he'd been doing all this time was getting taken care of by Melissa, and he didn't understand how she could give him such hope. Then he drank the elixir, and Melissa looked at him confused. Hope it worked. Then the guy, realizing he just wanted to shout the name he always wanted to say, even in his dreams he did. Then the guy knelt down and asked her to take his hand, because he wanted to express his gratitude to her since his fangs and tongue did not return to her. Rather, the girl gave him a new one. So he told her that it all belonged to her, and he would give her all of himself as she was his only master. So he asked her to stay as one of her people for as long as she wanted, at least until he repaid her what he owed her. Melissa was confused, but still appreciated it, but didn't understand how he could offer himself to her. She always knew it, but he was too nice. Besides, it wasn't her who made the medicine, it was Yuri, and all he had to do was to do his job well. Melissa liked his voice though. Who wouldn't like it when someone as sweet and handsome as him finally found a voice? In that case, of course, she wouldn't mind if Nain said he wanted to be with Yuri and wished them to live happily ever after. They're having a big festival celebration soon, and Yona added that it's a great cause since everyone has plenty of money at this time. Melissa looked at her and swore she was cursed with an obsession for money, and it reminded her of the ridiculous nonsense Nain had said yesterday, and frankly, she thought Yona would be good with rap music. The summer festival was more for the commoners than anyone else, and Yona had noticed that Melissa had never been interested in it before, and it was odd that she was paying attention now. Melissa might have been a notorious troublemaker, a devil among the nobility, but even she was an aristocrat to the core. Aristocrats who would attend the festival for the commoners and enjoy it like any other event. These are common nobles who don't care about social status. And like most typical female roles, Yona was right to assume that Melissa was going to make a fuss at the festival, because at the festival, the girl was going to get rid of Ian Basilios once and for all. So when Nain entered the room, she suggested he go out on a date during the festival, and the guy stumbled and dropped the glass tray on the floor and looked at her in confusion, wondering if she was serious. The girl, admiring how cute he was, decided to tease him a little, saying that if he didn't want to go, he could have said so, because she had plenty of other guys to ask. And, as expected from Nain, seeing him trying to fix the situation made her want to cry. But she couldn't keep teasing a nice guy like him, so she said it wasn't a big deal. She wasn't hitting on him and didn't want to call it a real date. She remembered asking him to be her partner at the ball, and she needed to do the same this time. Yuri and Ian were supposed to go with them. Based on what Melissa had heard from Yuri, the prince had offered to go to the festival with her. Of course, this is a big event in the novel, so even if she rejects it, she will end up going with him. So crushing him can only be done at the right moment, but Yuri, Crown Prince, and Melissa would make a funny trio. A bride who wants to break the engagement, a groom who is interested in another girl, and that very other girl. Some might misunderstand and think it's a fight between a hellcat and a saint for a handsome man, or mistake her for a villain who's interfering with someone else's date because she doesn't want to lose her man. But what worried her most was that the Crown Prince thought that when Melissa insisted that she wanted to break up with her, she was just pretending to be an unapproachable woman, and actually thinks she was trying to break him up with Yuri because she didn't want to lose him. That's why she made a fuss at the festival where he was going to confess to her. Since Ian is wishful thinking, if he doesn't get this situation right, Melissa won't even be afraid to stain her hands with imperial blood. Sometimes Nain would look at Melissa with such a stare that it took her breath away. It was very strange, and even seemed a bit frightening. She decided to think less about it and go pick out your outfit for the festival, and Yona, who saw her in such a state, wasn't going to help her at all. A few days later, they went to a festival that looked exactly like a Korean night market, and she could have sworn that the author couldn't imagine what a Western festival would look like, so she wrote it completely based on Korean ones. But immediately they heard a lot of noise and noticed Yang and Yurei walking through the crowd. The guy said he was trying to pick an outfit that wouldn't draw much attention to himself, but apparently it didn't work out so well. He was sure that Yuri might be jealous, but asked her not to worry as he had no interest in any of these women and just answered all their letters and greetings. As expected from the protagonist, and their presence is no joke, however, she was sure that her Nain possesses better beauty than the prince, but he gets no attention, while Ian has the crowd wrapped around his finger. The reason is simple. It's all about the fact that Yang is the main character. And while Nain is also incredibly beautiful, he's just an extra side character. It's all because their presence in the novel is different. Then they finally meet Yuri. Melissa didn't realize what a tense atmosphere there was, because Yuri is always friendly with others, and Nain is kind to everyone, and they should have been able to communicate with each other perfectly instead of arguing endlessly. At the same time, they were joined by the Crown Prince, who saw Nain and asked if he was Melissa's lover, thus referring to the 3.000 women he had, but the guy was just her servant. But Melissa realized that she didn't have to deny it, so she just came closer to the guy and hugged him tightly, which shocked the prince. However, the prince decided to leave it as it was, and he said it as if he had to put up with Melissa. However, she is the one who puts up with his insolence, and should he be so confident that he came to the festival of a woman who is not his fiancée? Walking around the festival, Ian won a prize in virtually every game he played, and explained it all by noticing how Yuri looked at those prizes, and he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. It was a scene from the novel, and if the novella was to be believed, Yang performed well in the game booths and won Yuri's favor with her easy and attractive charm. But this place was different from the novella, as there is one person whom the man can't beat even with his cheating baffs of the protagonist, is someone who has an excellent reputation as an experienced Korean of any game. Someone so talented that even the owner of gaming booths in the past has asked to stay away from the night markets. And that was exactly Melissa. When she was a kid, she used to throw away her textbooks and run outside to play games until her parents started calling her to come home, and she had no idea that experience would come in handy. Plus, she's a reincarnator, which means she has a good sense of what kind of games they'll be facing. And around the same time, Yuri starts to show interest in the prizes, and Ian tries to win them for her, which is exactly what the novel says. But now, everything is going to change. Now she points to a teddy bear that looks like Jan and says it's cute. But this toy looks really awful, and Melissa wouldn't be surprised if people curse it if it's given to a child. They're bound to cry. The author, who had no originality of his own, filled the stands with games that were familiar to Koreans. When Melissa first read about it in the novel, she didn't think much of it, but now it all seems very ridiculous. So Melissa decided to play with the prince, but it didn't matter anyway because the result would be the same. And everything happened exactly as Melissa expected, because even Ian, the best knight in the novel, can't sweat in a game they never played before. He quickly adapted to it and set a new record with his amazing skills. And the owner was about to give Jan a plush toy. But Melissa intervened in the conversation and said that if she set a new record, she could take the toy herself, because she paid first and had the right to do so. Then the girl concentrated, realizing that she needed to have good basic instincts and reflexes in order to play catch the mole. The rest could be fueled by rage. The first part was for Ian, who slept with other girls. The second for Jake, who always ignored her, followed by Jack, who tried to drown Nain, and this for Peacock because he's a major and a waste. So Melissa broke the prince's record by setting a new one, and she finally realized why they said this game was a good stress reliever. After that, the prince couldn't accept his loss, and they began to go through one game after another where Melissa won every time. She realized that strength doesn't matter here. What is really needed is skill and speed. Then it is mandatory to summon your inner anger, and the left hand is only a helper. After that, they saw the last attraction, where in the victory for all the games there is a special prize. The owner of this appealed to the guys, saying that this prize is sure to please the ladies present. But Melissa could not listen to this, and explained that she had won all the prizes, and showed the paper with all the marks, and asked him for the prize for her deserved first place. The prize was a red pearl ring, a valuable magical item that would never appear at a village festival even as a first-place prize. Yes, the festival organizers advertised it as the grand prize. They probably assumed that no one could win, so they used it as a way to attract guests. In other words, it's false advertising. So the man confusedly said that they couldn't claim Melissa won it all by herself when others had also helped and decided to go check with the elders. While everyone present confirmed that she had broken new records everywhere. Now that the owner knew the truth, he was getting wildly nervous. It seemed he finally realized the situation he was in and whether Melissa would be able to get her red pearl ring. Melissa realized that this was bullshit because he had given the same excuse to Jan in the novel when Jan threatened him with a smile, and he panicked and offered another expensive item in return. When Melissa did the same, the guy offered her another thing and handed her a small crown, saying that it was not just any old crown, but all those studded jewels were real. It was a precious crown rumored to be used by a fairy. But Melissa realized he was lying to her again, because it wasn't that thing in the novel. There was a necklace in the novel, and he would have given it to Yuri when he proposed to her with the fireworks. And Melissa couldn't believe that things had changed so much. Because of her interference, it was such an important plot point in the story. But anyway, the gift does look beautiful, but the texture and weight of it says it's cheap. Honestly, it was just trash that only looked nice on the outside. The princesses of this world are already considered incompetent, useless, and it's sad to see that they can't even do justice to their crowns. Melissa thought about who to give it to and gave it to the crown prince, saying that out of all of them, he looked the most like a real princess. He seemed a little devastated and lonely since he couldn't take the first place. Yes, and besides, he is a prince. But to everyone's surprise, the prince started to cry. Melissa didn't understand what was happening because it suited him very well. But Nain explained that perhaps he was offended because she had given him the crown as it is worn by a princess, and he was the crown prince. Melissa thought about it. She realized that the prince thought it was an insult to be treated like a princess. But why would he be offended? She didn't see anything wrong with being a princess, of course, in this cursed world of romantic fantasy. Princesses are treated like useless pretty girls to be sold into marriage. But after all, he wasn't even a real princess. He had everything he could ever want. Yet only now did the guy bother to ask her why she hated him so much. He didn't think she hated him so much to insult him like that. Having won all those games, his pride was hurt. And besides, he remembered her telling him she liked him from the very first time she met him, and thought that when she asked him to break up with him, it was a ploy to attract him. Melissa was dumbfounded and tried to calm down, because apparently he had finally gotten out of his fantasy that she would always love him no matter what, if anyone else saw what was going on. Now they would probably think she was a thug who was stalking an innocent prince. Melissa thought finally woke up, but he started playing the victim role, and she could literally feel her blood pressure rising. However, they were interrupted by the host of the whole festival, saying that the fireworks show would start right now, and Melissa decided that she didn't care if people found out his real identity or not, but she would do it right before the fireworks. And she looked at him closely and said the number one reason she hates him is because he has no conscience. The fact that he keeps flirting with a woman who doesn't love him when he hasn't broken off his engagement to her. It shows not only that his conscience has not said goodbye to me, but that he has sunk even lower than the neighbor's dog, because now he was openly cheating on her. It seemed to her that she misunderstood, and he absolutely did not improve with his past daily changing his chosen women as mere toys. But if he really loved Yuri, he would have broken up with her first. But this was absolutely impossible for a man who had flirted with many girls, and it would be immodest on his part. However, the guy started to justify himself because, in his opinion, it was about something else, as he thought that it was normal for all men to cheat a little bit. And besides, he was the crown prince, a man who was destined to become the next emperor, and he should be able to adjust to love and politics at the same time. As expected, the reason he is so against breaking up with her is because he wants to gain favor from the Duke. The second reason Melissa hates him is that even though he's the crown prince, He seems to have been taught only to be promiscuous, because he thinks of her as a pathetic fool. And before he started babbling about being heir to the throne, he should have realized that they were all human beings, including women, and he treated them like mere objects. Did he really think he wouldn't be criticized just because he was the crown prince? In other words, he would become emperor, especially in the world she lived in. That's why Melissa couldn't think about what the future held for them after this affair ended. He had to give people the respect they deserve and stop thinking that villains don't suffer, or something all forgiving women will accept his feelings no matter what, and better pay attention to his imperial duties and state affairs. Ian, the prince, born of a humble servant girl instead of the current empress, is the first child. But the illegitimate heir at present, he is the crown prince because the emperor favors him. But the second and third prince sons of the empress are constantly looking for opportunities to steal this position from him. If he still chooses to ignore the needs and wishes of the people, neglect his own duties, and waste his time attending unwanted parties, they may conclude that he is not competent enough to become a future emperor. Yang would have been in a dangerous situation if not for the support of her family. Funny thing is that he knew this very well and refused to part with Melissa until Yuri's power was clearly proven to the public and showed himself to be a selfish dog. In response to Melissa's confused face, Melissa explained to him that this meant that their family could choose another prince for the future empire. However, Yan, in confusion, thought that she was completely ignorant of politics, and it is not something that she can change on her own, because in the end, the final decision is left to the Duke, not the girl. Melissa hoped he wasn't a complete fool and confirmed that the Duke and Jake were indeed on his side, but he should have thought to himself that no matter who becomes emperor, the undeniable truth is that their family is a powerful family, and they only chose him for one reason, because Melissa was in love with him, and the Duke only let her come to that party because she wanted to. He gave her permission to travel, and even agreed to let them all go on vacation at her request. And did he think that her father would refuse her? Because no one knew what would happen if she talked to him about it. But in fact, Melissa realized that it was all a bluff, because there was no way that her father would listen to her so easily. But the prince wouldn't really know the truth, because the Duke never talks about her. He could only assume that their relationship wasn't very good, but there was no way to confirm it. So the prince had to think about what would happen if her words were true. So now he had to worry about what to do. After all, he can't even beat her in the usual games. She was really wondering if he could win other future battles for the Empire, since if he wasn't confident enough, he had to spare his pretty face to go live in silence. And that's what she meant when she said that the crown looked good on him. Then she turned around and left with the others. And since the fireworks show was about to start, they decided to stay to watch them together. As Melissa stood with Nain watching the fireworks, she realized that it must be hard to be the main character of a romantic fantasy, because Yuri's family arrived at the worst possible time, and Melissa would have run away from home if she had a family like that. Yuri ended up going to the fireworks show with her brothers, but in the novel, the girl liked her family, so she was sure it was good for her. But in reality, Yuri didn't want to give Nain a chance to be alone with Melissa and wanted to keep an eye on them, but unfortunately, all her plans failed. Melissa, on the other hand, was glad that she had finally dealt with Ian, and all she needed to do now was just sit back and relax, which was great. However, immediately Melissa was shocked because this is where in the novel, Jan confesses his love to Yuri. But for some reason, her brother was there and he had a camera. The exciting celebration was coming to an end, but Melissa, who was about to reach blissful peace after getting rid of Jan instead, was shocked to see her brother chasing after Yuri. The next morning, Melissa felt very ill. As did Nain. From yesterday, she assumed it was because they had eaten everything at the festival. Melissa wondered how he was feeling now that she thought about it. It seemed like yesterday he tried to say something to her during the fireworks, but then Jake showed up and ruined everything. Melissa realized that it was Jake who was causing all of her problems. She'd barely gotten rid of Ian before her brother was hanging around Yuri. She knew he often followed her around pretending to be her protector, but who knew he had the nerve to spy on Yuri when she was at the festival with another man, even sneaking pictures of her. Melissa thought he hadn't been like this before in the novel. It wouldn't be easy to get rid of him, and even if she tried to catch him in the act, he would just quickly do a quick footwork and hide since he was a master at it. and knowing that she had to deal with the problem from the root, because if she didn't get rid of Jake and make him stop spying on Yuri, her privacy would always be in danger. She didn't want to resort to that, but she had no other choice. So Melissa wanted to get some special training and acquire something, since it was time to open the hunt for the hunter. One of Henny's maids noticed that Nain really didn't look happy. Although he should be happy that he went to the festival with Melissa, and she didn't understand why he was so gloomy, because even she was jealous when she found out that he went there. So the girl assumed that it was because the police had rejected him, because it was obvious that he really liked her. But unfortunately, she already had a fiancé. Even though he was a prominent man, it would be hard to resist the crown prince. However, the guy replied that the crown prince is not his rival. Especially, Melissa is not interested in him at all. Besides, even if she is in love with someone else, it doesn't matter to him, because as long as she doesn't leave him, he will always be on her side. Yes, he belongs to Melissa, but she was not obliged to belong to him, so he has no right to fight with anyone for her love. The girl thought about it and realized that she also liked Lady Melissa. But if she was in love with her, she wouldn't be able to say such words, because even if that's his feelings, why does he look so sad? Time passed and autumn came in all its glory. Melissa spent time with Nain and Yuri in the yard and realized that they were too kind to her, and even without a doubt would give her money if she asked for it. Everyone around her knew that it had been a month since Melissa had started her training and hoped that she would finish in time since the competition was next week. Also, Yuri would be there as a representative of Elizabeth's family, since the other magicians in their family specialize in attack magic, so they were forbidden to participate. But since she has healing magic, she would pass, and if Melissa got hurt, she should have just found her there, she would help her. This coming week, the Imperial family is having a hunter competition, and according to the rules, every noble house has to participate. That means all those annoying guys will be there and she'll be there. 150 years ago, when the Basileos Empire was infested with demons, luckily the Grand Archmage sealed them off, restoring peace and safety, but the old practice of periodic expeditions to defeat the demons has now turned into the hunting competition they have today. It is held every year to commemorate the past when their people were overrun by demons. Of course, much has changed since then, and now it has become just a social gathering for the nobility. When Melissa got there, she heard some unhappy conversations from all sides, because the others thought that her outfit was not worthy, because apparently they expected her to wear a corset while hunting. But Melissa calmed herself down, because she had to be patient. It was only natural that they reacted this way, because they had lived in this world all their lives. Then some guy came up to her. It was the first time Melissa had ever seen him. Plus, he was ugly, and although she hated to say it, she felt like he was just an extra side character, since in this ridiculous romantic fantasy world, all the hot people are always the main characters no matter if they are good or evil, and the unattractive ones are usually just secondary characters. But nevertheless, Nain was an exception, as he was handsome, despite being a side character, and Melissa realized that there had to be some logical reason for that. The guy approached and asked if Melissa wanted to be noticed by the Crown Prince so badly that he thought she could hardly hunt with such thin, fragile hands, and suggested that she just obediently take her place among the others, instead of getting in the way of the men. The girl realized that it was better not to even answer his claims, and the guy was indignant that she ignored him, saying that apparently she did not understand in a nice way, and if she had any decency, she had better apologize to him and just go sit under an umbrella. The moment the guy grabbed her hand, she immediately twisted it, realizing what a weakling he was and wondering if it was the least he was wearing at all. Couldn't he realize that she had already been chosen to represent their kind, and that decision could not be changed? It couldn't be that he didn't know that, so why did he try to pick a fight with her? She knew that many of them had a problem with her participating in the hunt, but even the Duke and the Emperor approved of her participation. Was he insinuating that their decision was wrong? After the guy started trying to justify himself, Melissa explained that, "I'm still, even if he talks nasty behind her back, but if he keeps hitting on her, she's not going to stay put, and since she's also a villain with emotions, it was a bit insulting to her." One of the maids who came up to her explained that this man was the eldest son of the Duke of Yorkshire, crying with fear, and as Melissa thought her maids were only giving her trouble, But the Duke told her to bring at least 5 people with her. And that's why the girl wanted to bring only Nain and Jonah here, but had to respect the honor of the family. But now it didn't matter at all. And she decided to start planning to show everyone such a great acting that even Peacock would cry. And she shouted very loudly, saying that she had eaten so many delicious things that she had a stomachache and needed to go to the ladies' room. Iona decided to intervene in the conversation and told everyone that Lady Melissa needed to take care of the emergency, so it was worth waiting with the horses, because it must be awkward to deal with stomach problems, and they, as her servants, should understand and sympathize, which Melissa was extremely indignant about. But since she had to run away, they will talk about it later. As Melissa ran off into the forest, she realized that they hadn't blown the horn or raised the flag yet, so there was still time before the hunt began, and it looked like she had found it in time to ask Jake to come down from the tree he was sitting in. When he ignored her, she told him that she had used a magic scroll to confirm his whereabouts, and that if she didn't get out now, she would force her way to him. Melissa was outraged because her little brother didn't even say hello to her favorite sister, and she would have screamed that she wanted to drink the trash out of him, but that's not why she came here. Then we should just get over it and asked him if he liked rabbits. In response to his uncomprehending expression, she said that because she was at least a lot stronger than her brother, but his face told her that he doubted what she could do with the tiny amount of magic she had. But did he know that nothing was impossible with a lot of practice? So using a little magic, she turned her brother into a rabbit, and they smiled and said that the rabbit was much cuter and weaker than him, but the hunt was on. As the horn sounded, all the participants got on their horses. Yuri watched and worried if everything had gone according to plan, because Melissa still hadn't arrived. Melissa had asked Yuri for some magic earlier, even though this action would use up all the little magic she had, and then she wouldn't be able to use magic for the rest of her life, because it wouldn't be much different from her current state. Melissa asked Yuri for a favor with a pitying look on her face, because she had no one else to turn to but her. Yuri couldn't refuse and said that the militia could count on her, because she was ready to do everything in her power to help her use her magic for at least an hour, which I expected from her as a genius magician. After that, Melissa finally joined them, explaining that they had piped up much sooner than she expected, and she realized that she had gone far into the woods from here. But their plan had worked perfectly, and all was well. Melissa should have been on horseback during the hunting competition. After all, it makes her look cool. That's why she tried to learn in riding everywhere in such a short time, earning a bruise with every bump. Then she got on her horse, which she named Black Devil because of his raven color. He was known for his bad temper, rather the most vicious temper of all the horses in her family, and he lived up to his name, because there was no telling how many times Melissa had fallen off him. But it was Melissa. She even managed to tame a wild dog, so she promised her horse that if they succeeded, she would let him chew her brother's hair. At the same time, the Duke of Yorkshire's son wanted to see how long it would take Melissa to sling mud at the others, blindly trusting his father to have her back, because he was sure that she herself was not capable of anything. But then there was a very loud sound, and he assumed it was a big animal. But then Melissa flew out into the road, and he didn't understand how she could be called a lady, but she was also fragile and weak. At the same time, Jake was running through the forest as a rabbit, trying to figure out how it all turned out so well. He was just spying, or rather protecting Yuri like he always did, but his damn sister had used magic on him. But Melissa would never have the magical ability to do something like that. However, now that she was on horseback catching up to him, he realized he had underestimated her a bit. He didn't know she was such a psycho to say such a thing and chase him on that crazy horse. He couldn't believe that Melissa had always been so big, and frankly, he wouldn't be so much afraid of a wolf chasing him, for he was sure he could get away from it, and besides, he was just a wild animal. But this woman is the most dangerous one there is. It didn't matter how long he was running away, and he was throwing the wolf off his trail. But he couldn't understand why the hell Melissa was still on his tail, and he couldn't get rid of her. Melissa realized that her transformation magic was starting to weaken, and she would no longer have to use this expensive tracking scroll. Next to her ran Nain, who had changed his fur color with magic and had been chasing Jake all this time. But Yuri stopped in the rabbit's path and wondered how long Melissa could chase it, as it looked very pathetic and fragile, as if it would die instantly if left unprotected. Usually people like to think that they have to protect cute and weak creatures, but the problem is that they never ask the weak if they want protection. And moreover, they never say which of their actions are actually protection, and not to mention that they just think you are weak. Immediately, the rabbit turned back into a human. He was insanely upset, and Melissa, seeing him like that, felt like the bad guy, but told him she was relieved that he was safe, and why he still hadn't thanked her for bringing him here in one piece. Didn't he realize that she was just protecting him? After all, he had turned into a rabbit because of her mistake, and she should have protected him from that dire wolf. So thanks to her, he didn't get caught, and neither did the other hunters. Jake was outraged, however, and asked her when he had ever asked her to protect him because he could take care of himself. But it all sounded like nonsense, but he just had to think how bad it was when he was a rabbit, and how much worse it was if he was a real person, mystery chasing after someone with a mobile defense, even though they didn't even ask for it. Jake was a character who always silently watched over Yuri from afar, and Melissa always believed he would appear out of nowhere to save Yuri from any dangers she faced. But if you look at it another way, he could also appear out of nowhere to ambush her whenever he wanted. Not only that, he never asked her consent and just assumed that she was weak and trapped by her own illusions, thus just stalking her. So Melissa gave him a serious look and reminded him that she had told him many times that such actions were not romantic at all if he was in love with her. Then he shouldn't have peeked at me from behind somewhere, but told her to her face. Jura had only seen Jake at the scuffle with Melissa. She had never had a real relationship with him. In other words, it was the first time they had officially met, and now approaching him, Jura explained that she thought he was watching her everywhere to kill her. Watching Jake's reaction was funny to Melissa, because Yuri had the same reaction when she first learned of Jake's stalking, although it was unknown if she felt the same way about the affair. So Yuri said that Jake was actually the most dangerous to her, and she was very uncomfortable and scared. So she could protect herself because she wasn't hopeless, and asked him not to do that to you from now on. And also that he should always stay away from her for about 100 million kilometers. To think that a sniper like Jake would be so shocked that he even dropped his gun, and by the looks of it there was no saving him, Melissa hoped that he would take this opportunity to pull himself together. But then they were surprised to hear the horn blowing, signaling the end of the competition. I couldn't have the event organized by the imperial family ended after only an hour, because something must have gone wrong. There are only two possible reasons why a hunting competition can end so early. One is when no one can hunt, and for an emergency or critical situation. The other is when someone has captured so much prey that it's pointless for others to try to beat them. And now, looking at the pile, Melissa couldn't figure out what kind of psycho had so many cold-blooded murders, and if any of the main men in the novel had caught such a big prey on whoever it was far from winning Yuri's heart. Melissa was surprised to see Jack Porton, but if you think about it, he had the right to participate in the hunt too, because the Basileos Empire treats the Portons as if they were a noble family, but he never participated in the hunt in the novel. It seemed that absolutely no one wanted to get involved, but they had no choice, because if you corner a werewolf, you can't predict what kind of catastrophe might happen, and not without a reason. Melissa had to ask him, because it had been so long since they'd last met, and she'd thought he'd been dead for a while, which the guy agreed with, since they'd mostly organized tea parties, and the mages were doing their best to keep him away from that chemistry, and her family had recently beefed up their security, which annoyed him. Anyway, the hunter competition had started, and he'd asked the leaders permission to come here, but he'd been hanging around them the whole time, and they didn't know it. He was sure that she wouldn't have the strength to hit him this time, and Melissa fought back with her sword, realizing that it was broken. But Jake was defeated with a single blow, and her sword sacrificed itself to defeat him. However, at the same moment, she realized that the sword was still in place, and she had just destroyed Jake. Despite her brother's reaction, she realized that she was only able to defeat the werewolf because she had used an item from one of the main characters. So she started to comfort her brother, saying she was sorry, and she would definitely find him a new gun. But even Yuri told her that there was absolutely no way to fix it. This gun had a divine blessing, and even if they restored it with magic, they still wouldn't get its sacred powers back. And besides, they probably wouldn't be able to physically repair it at all after the collision with the werewolf's head. Melissa had just remembered that the god of this world was so ungenerous that he'd feuded with werewolves who didn't believe in him, with a werewolf knocked out in front of her, her brother sobbing over his broken gun at her side, and Nina behind her, pretending to be a dog because she'd missed the right time to transform into a human, and all the aristocrats staring at her wide-eyed. Melissa just hoped that it was all a dream and would be over soon. But Ian came to her, and she knew that he would want to upset her. So to her surprise, the guy said that she looked tired like the rest of the guests, and thought that they should finish the hunt early and they would announce the winners later. After the hunt, there was supposed to be an award ceremony and banquet, but Jan says they will miss it. And of all people, Jan was the one who tried to be considerate to the others, as he asked the others not to talk about what happened today. He also said that he would contact the Portons and the Imperial family would handle the conflict with the guy because he tried to hurt a member of the Duke's family. Melissa was very surprised that he was suddenly acting like this, but said that she was the only one who knew how to handle Jack and asked to borrow a map to take him back. Melissa could have simply asked for their family's carriage to be sent, but she couldn't refuse the Crown Prince's benevolence in front of these people. Besides, not that she hated his brooding, but she found it suspicious. After they left in the carriage, Jur said that if the werewolf didn't wake up, the Porthons might react a little harshly, and she would accompany them as a doctor, which would be much safer. Melissa was glad to have one less problem to deal with, but there were still some she needed to deal with, and now she was thinking about where she could find a gun that looked like the old one, and also blessed by God, and how to fix her problems with Jake. But Melissa should have realized even then that those problems were nothing compared to what lay ahead. Melissa reincarnated, so she knew the original story, but even so, she didn't have the power to drastically change the plot. This means that certain things will inevitably happen, like the fact that the main characters will fall in love with Yuri anyway, or events like the festival and the hunt. It also includes the fact that a villain will show up. Back at the manor, she told her father that she had slew the werewolf that attacked their house last time, and didn't think it was right of her to just leave him there. So she brought him home, and the guy with the wrinkled face who is now sulking in his room is his son. He is not himself right now because he recently lost something valuable. So he needed to be alone. The hunting competition was over. Well, so he didn't have to worry about it, and this is Baron Elizabeth's Miss Yuri, and she was there as a guest. She also said that she would take responsibility for all the werewolf's mischief, and that was all she had to say for the moment, and called her servants to follow her. The Duke was outraged because the werewolf had been mute before, and now he was talking. Melissa went into her room, went to the bathroom, and felt as if a weight had fallen from her shoulders. And since now she had a lot of problems ahead of her, it was necessary to take a break. Besides, it would not hurt to take a little time, because she had to think more carefully about everything that had changed because of her, and the fact that the god of luck often pretends to smile at her, secretly deceiving her. But then a maid burst into her room and told her that she hadn't seen Yuri for a long time, which meant that the girl had practically disappeared at the main gate, because there was no way she had been in the garden looking at butterflies or anything like that, and now Melissa had to go and find her and ask around. Toward evening, after searching the entire estate, they realized that there was no sign of her anywhere. It was as if she had fallen through the ground. But Melissa hoped that this wouldn't happen because it was still hunting season and too early for that. Had she changed the storyline, it also affected the chronology of the main events in the novel. However, immediately Melissa realized that it was too quiet in the garden, and then she saw her dog Liv. But something was obviously wrong because he wasn't wearing a collar, as servants are usually afraid of him. Melissa had him on a collar, but someone had taken it off him. But then Melissa was startled because Liv suddenly spoke, and she hoped it wasn't what she thought it was, because she realized she hadn't brought her sword. In fact, they didn't know if it was a fake Liv or if someone else had taken possession. If it was the former, she wouldn't hesitate to tear him to pieces, but if it was the latter, she might lose him forever. So when she asked who it was, she was told that he was just temporarily using her dog's body to break into the room. Luckily, this dog has enough noble werewolf blood flowing through his body to be alive. They have their own sorcery, which is very similar to magic. He was the most experienced in this field. He liked to do cruel things for fun, so when he heard Jack was interested in the girl, he kidnapped her just for fun. After that, the dog thanked her for luring the girl out of that mage-protected mansion, Because thanks to Melissa, everything became much easier, because even this girl was nothing without the patronage of the Baron. All he had to say was that he had kidnapped the little princess, and since the villain had arrived, Melissa, Nain, and Jack had to come and get her. This was Mayan Porton, a handsome, long-haired man. That was his description in the novel. He was a villain and only a minor character, but surprisingly popular with the fans, unlike Melissa. But as the strongest among the Fortons, he was recognized as their leader, Nain's older twin brother. He was like Peacock in the story, but some readers even liked the fact that Megan didn't hide his devilish character, unlike Peacock, who pretended to be innocent. Although if Melissa could go back to her world and tell all the fans that this guy is not the devil, but Satan in the flesh. Jack finally woke up and Melissa told him that his boss had kidnapped Yuri, but it was clear as day that Jack couldn't stand up to the Megan now, because he couldn't even stand up to her. But if you think about it, kidnapping Jure would be a lever to awaken Jack's powers, and after killing Mignon to save Jure, he would claim the top spot. The awakening of a werewolf's dormant powers happens after a strong, sudden emotional shock. But in the novel, he didn't awaken his powers until after the onset of winter, and now it's just the beginning of fall, which was quite early. Yona had already noticed that the most important thing in this situation was that Mayan had told them to come rescue Jura with their own hands out of the high probability of it being a trap, but they couldn't just sit and wait idly. In the original story, Jack rushed to rescue Jure as soon as he heard about her kidnapping, but since Jura was kidnapped while she was at her place, Melissa has to contact her family. Besides, it was her fault for not being able to protect her, but her family couldn't do anything about it now either. The thing is that mages and werewolves are two feuding sides. Their pointless feud has grown to the point of mutual intolerance of each other. And Mayan is not so stupid. He definitely put up a protective barrier to prevent the mages from using their powers. After that, they decided that they were obliged to rescue her. Melissa immediately informed that Yona would get a raise during her life-threatening work. And although she didn't know how the girl could help them in their rescue mission, she couldn't ignore her amazing ability to solve any problem. After that, she said that Jack was also going with them because Megan had personally invited him, but he just had to make sure that he was safe. There was a high chance that the man wouldn't listen to her and would cause more problems. But since he was one of the strongest members of the Porton family, his powers could help in the battle. But the main problem is that Nain looks very depressed. Since the talk about Mayan, he was forced to return to the forest where werewolves live. And in addition, along with Jack, his enemy, and judging by Nain's stories, Mayan is not the best example of an older brother. But now Nain tried to pretend that everything was fine and said that he realized he would have to go back there sooner or later, which Melissa was surprised to hear because she didn't expect it, since she thought he liked it here and thought he couldn't just leave the forest he grew up in. But she reassured herself that now he just had things to finish, as it was not the time to worry about it, and they didn't have much time left. They couldn't neglect the time if it was about kidnapping, and it was especially important for them to get there in time since no one knows what this crazy guy Megan might do. So they were heading to Earth to save the main character, Yuri. Sitting in the dungeon realized that the story was changing, and she liked the new move. She liked the fact that this hackneyed story was slowly changing, and this character had changed too. If everything had followed the story, she would have been kidnapped at a different time, and now the guy was like Nain. He was just a minor character whose story is not revealed in this story and should have died much earlier as a beggar, but he has a completely different form of spirit. Mayan turned to her and told her that she was the main character here, and knew it, and had to win the hearts of all men, because Yuri said that she had fallen in love with several guys whose hearts were hers, and now she was talking to herself. And Mayan didn't even suspect it, as this guy was just another pawn of this world and a pathetic puppet like her, but didn't understand why Melissa had become different. This cruel daughter of the Duke, she was a pawn too. She was just another cog in the wheel of the spinning world, if you remember. She behaved like any other child, but everyone around her treated her like a villain, and Yuri just needed to watch from the sidelines in the arms of the Crown Prince to get his happy ending, leaving her with nothing. So Yuri didn't understand why she had changed so much, how she was so easy to control her destiny. Did she not hear the voice that whispered to her about her fate? Or did she just refuse to accept it and choose her own way, and realize that probably this time she would not be saved by Jack, but instead it might be Melissa?